Hi everyone, Trevor New here. Welcome to the Stage by Stage Show Live again for more rally stories. Thanks very much for all the messages, all the support, all the feedback that you gave me from last week. The show we had with Plum Tyndall was absolutely brilliant. No better man to tell a few stories and testimony of the fact that we went well beyond 2.5 hours. It seemed to be that you enjoyed it. He sold a fair bit of merchandise as well, so he made a few quid on the night, which is great. And so it's the same principle tonight, exactly the same. If you're watching this live, good to have you here. We will take your questions as we normally do. If you need to have a look back at any of the shows we've done before, such as the Plum Tyndall one, then the place to go is stagebystage.com/blog. That goes as well for the podcasts. The one we released last week was with Henry Catchpole. And again, lots of feedback on that. Henry being an absolutely top guy. The Carfaction websites where you'll find him. So comments as usual, get them into us, either if you're watching live on YouTube or on Facebook. Just let us know where you're watching from. Any stories you have or any reminders of stories that'll prompt Kenny later on. So Kenny McKinstry being the star of the show with his co-drivers, with Robbie Philpott, and with Noel Orr coming on a little bit later as well. So anything that you'd like to ask those guys, this is your chance to ask questions. It's really important that we get your interaction as part of it. That's why we do these shows live. But of course, if you can't get watching it all tonight, don't panic. Literally 10 minutes after we finish off tonight, it'll all be uploaded onto YouTube and Facebook, and it's there to watch at your leisure, as a lot of people do. As I keep saying, on the big telly on a Saturday night with a few beers, that's not a bad thing to do. So that's what's happening tonight, and I'm really looking forward to it. Again, the messages of support and the people who are waiting for this. I've had so many phone calls today with people just excited and looking forward to it. But equally next week, so this time next week, a lot of you should be in Clonakilty for the West Cork Rally, St. Patrick's weekend. Clearly, it's not going to happen for the second time, which is, of course, such a shame, but given the current climate, it's understandable. So, if you remember a few weeks back, we did the 50th anniversary of the Galway International Rally, which Kenny came on, as well as a few top drivers, Austin McHale, Rory Kennedy, there's a few of them on to talk about that. So Kevin O'Driscoll, who helped me put that together with Bobby Clinton, Kevin had a chat with some of the guys in Cork Motor Club, and they thought it'd be a good idea to do something similar on the West Cork Rally weekend. So between us all, we've come up with a list of people that have agreed to come on next week. So next Friday night at 7:30, we're going to have organisers. So Bones O'Connor, who could fill a show on his own, clearly. Kevin O'Driscoll and Greg McCarthy, so the latter organising part of the organising team. Likewise, around the organising side of things, we hope to have Ian Campbell from the BRC and Paddy Flanagan from the Tarmac Championship as well at some point during the evening. And then competitors, we'll have Gwyndaf Evans, so G3 Mark II man, for many, many years, part of the Welsh contingent, of which there were plenty. Phil Collins, another man who could fill the 3 hours on his own. Frank Kelly will be there, hopefully. Donna Kelly, who's won it, of course, 5 times in a row. And Paul Nagel should be with us as well. So that's a cracking weekend. Friday night to look forward to next weekend as we go through that. As I said, anything that you need to brush up on, stagebystage.com/blogs, where you're going to find that. So that's what's happening tonight. And because this man who's about to come on could tell stories forever. So someone I met way back when I must have been 13, 14 for the very first time. I just started to think about doing navigation rallies. He was already doing it around the streets of Banbridge on a Sunday night. You'll have found him in a Mark I Escort, probably back in those days, Mark II later on. And somebody who's went on to have 45 years or even more than 45 years just is a complete speed nut. He just can't get enough of it. Even now in his later years, still rallying in a World Rally car. If he was able to get out in this current climate, he'd be out in one. And along the way, he's just won so much, double Irish Tarmac champion, British national champion, won the Northern Ireland Rally Championship many times, Rallycross championships. It just goes on and on. And even just looking at his EWRC page, you're getting close to 300 events, and that's not even a fraction of them. So well over 500 rallies started. Just the best bloke that you're ever going to meet. You never see him flustered either. And I'd just like to welcome in Kenny McKinstry. Kenny, how are you? Are you keeping well?
Yeah, very good. You make me sound really good. I don't know how you done that, like, but the other boy that could do that there was Philpot. You know, he always was able to do the talk, like, you know.
Aye, well, it's richly deserved. It's just describing accurately what you're all about, and there's nobody is more enthusiastic for the sport of rallying, not just as a competitor, but as a rally preparation side of things, helping out organisers, all the usual things. But also, if you think back to when I ever went to your workshops in Banbridge, which by the time you waded through all the lawnmowers to get into the workshop, if you wanted to go and have a chat with Kenny McKinstry, you stood alongside him as he was building a diff, or building a gearbox, or maybe putting an L1 cam and a BDA head, or whatever it may be, and you chatted away. And you were always ready for questions because you didn't just get away with just having a flippant comment. You were always quite inquisitive. So that's the visual bit that I remember about going to see you in the workshops in Ballydown Road.
Yeah, it was all good. I'm impressed that you can remember an L1 camshaft. There's not many people could remember that in the BDA, like, but look, this. I have had so many years, met so many people. My goodness, like the stories, like, well, we can tell some stories, and the stories that we can't tell. You know, there's just so many. Like, but brilliant years. I still love rallying. The only thing I hate about it now is that mostly everybody's quicker than me, and I don't like that at all.
All right. Okay. Still competitive then, yeah.
Yeah, look, I still want to win. I do understand why I can't do the times anymore, but it's just great. It's a great feeling to get out in a rally car, you know, world rally car, F2 car, doesn't really matter. There's just a great buzz, you know, about it, like, and the crack that you have with the boys, even during the events and that, you know, it's just super. Like.
But not even when you're on the events. Like I can go back all those years. I can't remember how many years it was, but like Sean and Sam was about, you know, all those guys that stood with you. And of course the family, you got Maggie, Susan, Emma and
Yeah.
Kenny and James and everybody's sticking together. But like you couldn't have done anything, any fraction of what you did without the support of all those people. Like
Boys like, you know, Gary Brown, David Greer was involved in a whole lot of our stuff.
yeah.
You know, it goes on and on and on. You know, the amount of people that we had working through the years at cars, like Aver McCartney was another guy. He was always in the middle of stuff, in the middle of development as well. Like,
Yeah.
so, you know, it's just crazy, like, you know, and most of those guys, certainly in the very early days, like, um, you know, Kevin Doyle would have sat in the rally car in the very early days. John McGaffin, obviously, he was sort of involved in navigation rallies to start with, and then once the sort of navigation rallies came to a head or came to an end, we started then to do stage rallies and stuff like that, you know. So no pace notes or anything then, you know, it was all blind rallying. Like Kevin, he jumped in, he just sat there, he smiled, handed out time cards. That was basically it.
Yeah.
But he, you know, you asked Kevin Doyle what he got out of it, and it was just a crack.
Yeah. The buzz.
You know what I mean? It was just absolutely the crack of going to rallies, like, you know.
Yeah. And it's fair to say when you're sat in the car with you, you're probably going to be in various different shapes as you go through the corners. So, and that is probably a lot of the attraction as well. When you get into shapes like that,
Oh, lovely.
that's definitely it. Or even that one there, where you're exploring the ditch a little bit more, maybe in that one.
Yeah, that's Annie. Whenever you see pictures like that, you know, I drove Tom Garrity's Mark II a few years back, and I just couldn't believe that you could get a car that sideways after driving, you know, four-wheel drive cars and stuff like that. And you know, they might go, you know, if they go out maybe a foot, 2 foot sideways, you think it's a big thing. And like, sure, the Mark IIs was sticking our backside in the hedge all the time. You know?
Yeah. That's part of the crack.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So one of the people that you mentioned earlier was a co-driver who jumped in with you not that long into his career, but he certainly changed how you went about your rallying to a fair degree, and just really upped the whole professional side of things of what you did at McKinstry Motorsport, and that's Robbie Philpott. So Robbie is somebody who I met way back when I was doing my first navigations. I think I was 14. Robbie had already started to do rallies at that point. I only lived about 12 miles away from me in Uri. So doing navigation rallies to learn his trade, and then he built it up. And again, somebody who's just gone from then to where he is now, and he's in a completely different part of the world. So let's say hello to Robbie Philpott. Hi, Robbie. How are you?
Hey, how's things, Trevor?
Wonderful. What about you? You're not in Uri tonight then?
No, I'm not in Uri tonight. I haven't been in Uri for a long time. But no, I'm enjoying myself. I'm in Hawaii tonight.
You're in Hawaii. Okay. And the normal base would be where?
I live my life between Florida, a little island off the west coast of Florida, and spend about 6 or 7 months a year there. And I have a home in France, and I spend the summers and major holidays and stuff there.
So where did it all go wrong then?
It
was
when I finished co-driving for Kenny there that I suddenly had a bit of money to spend.
The biggest problem with Robbie was Robbie never spent any money. That was the problem.
But he would,
I don't know where that reputation ever come from, Trevor, because I was the most generous person that there ever was on that team, and Sam will tell you that they never wanted for anything as long as I was there.
I'll tell you a story. Robbie with me about 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't know where he got the pound from, but he had lost it in the rally car, and he spent 15 minutes looking for it after the event was over.
So it's fair to say, Robbie, that all the expertise and a lot of what you learned as a co-driver, the logistics sides of things, doing deals, all of that, which is how you sort of brought a lot of the professionalism, as I said, to the Caliber team in particular, bringing them on board, has helped you then in your career right the way through to when you retired. What was it, 10 years ago? And again, just give us a quick overview of what that was, because I definitely need you back on to do one of the podcasts where we can educate people as to how you can go, like me, from literally a working class housing estate to what you've achieved over the years.
Well, I think the way for me that I got into rallying, or why I got into rallying, was really from an organizational point of view, or the thought that you could manage a team, a group of people, to try to achieve something, even if you had fairly limited resources, that if you could get the organizational side of things right, that you could make faster progress towards whatever the goal was. And, you know, there was no better place to try to do that than with Pete and the team down in Banbridge, because it was a fantastic opportunity for somebody who was young, inexperienced, just trying to learn how to do that without people around you panicking or commenting too much if you made the odd mistake along the lines. But through that, you know, I felt that we were able to take rallying from something that really was just a weekend sport, and with major sponsors coming into the sport, then to turn it into something that had a more professional look to it. And those organizational skills then I used from my business career point of view after I retired from rallying. And I was fortunate enough to do essentially exactly the same thing, which was organizing people to achieve, in this case, business goals. And that now in my later years, when I've retired from business, I work in support of Philip Young with Jack Young in touring car racing, in doing the organizational and the contract review and negotiations and things like that. So still involved in motorsport, but in a different way. But unlike Kenny, who was really into the driving and the technical side of things, you know, I was completely useless with a spanner or anything like that. I wouldn't have known what to do in those cases. I was just an organizer.
Yeah. But Go ahead, Kenny.
Right, well, a very good one, I would say. But to get, I suppose us all gelled together wouldn't have been easy, you know.
Yeah. And you needed a fairly thick skin as well when you're involved in the caliber team, as I remember all those years ago. You certainly you didn't wince back. You had to stand your ground, and you had to be strong because otherwise you'd been ripped. But good banter. It was all good fun. Like, there's no malice in it whatsoever. But just some of the laughs and the proper belly laughs that we had in that team, and the bits and pieces that I helped out by navigating chase cars. But the chase car point, when we had chase cars back then, when you Sam McKinstry and Gary Brown and the likes of John McLean, Davy Greer, Sammy Irwin, all those boys together, it would have been just like the whole Sumo 1 to Sumo 2. That call sign on some of the like Sumo 1 to Sumo 2, Fatty's bust his cornet, those types of things, just legendary, you know. And
where the hell is Sumo 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Luke was driving Sumo 3, which was the van, and one of our other guys, Paul Burnett, he had locked him in the toilet. So I had in one of the rallies in West Cork. I don't know how you remember it or not, Robbie. But we were squealing because we were going to meet him for tires and stuff. And of course, Luke was nowhere. Paul, Luke, he was nowhere to be seen. And was he annoyed whenever he got out of that toilet? Like, and we missed the service. Like, unbelievable stuff, you know.
Well, what about when we were down, was the early days of the Subaru legacy, whenever Subaru had given us 2 new road cars for the chase. Suddenly had Sumo, we were Sumo 1, of course, and if you had any sort of affliction at all in that team, you got a nickname handed to you in no uncertain terms.
Yeah.
You just had to suck it up and get on with it. So obviously we were Sumo 1, but we had Sumo 2 and Sumo 3 and Sumo 4 in those days. But we came to the end of the first stage. Got to the end of the stage. I was just clearing this on the radio, and it was Sumo 1 to Sumo 2, cleared the stage, no problems. We'll be with you in a minute or whatever. And then Sumo 2 come back and says, we're not going to make the end of that stage. And I said, okay, well, not a problem. Sumo 3, this is Sumo 1. We've cleared the stage. We'll get with you in the next minute. And Sumo 3 came on and said, we're not going to make it either. We're thinking, geez, okay, fair enough. Well, we're good enough. We'll go on with no problems. But it was only later we learned that Sumo 2 had crashed into Sumo 3. The road section. So we took out the 2 new Subarus that we had. We lost the 2 chase cars, and we had to deal with that on the fly in Galway, as I remember. I think it was Galway.
It was actually, if you remember, it was Gort.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Remember it clearly. Absolutely.
I had to explain to Subaru why we needed so many new front bumpers and headlamps and stuff like that for they hit each other head on.
That's the square in Gort there, because I was in Sullivan's Hotel about 5 years ago from a lunch, so I know that's Gort.
That was the one.
When we were wrecking, we used to go into that hotel in the centre of Gort and have the marked lunch. We used to always do it was the market day. Do you remember, Pete? And there was big slab of potatoes and whatever the roast of the day was and the whole thing on it.
It fed you for 2 days, like, unbelievable.
Seafood chowder's pretty mighty in there as well. That's what I had last time.
We were never that fancy, Trevor. We didn't have the money for a seafood chowder. We had either vegetable soup or just whatever the marked lunch was. Willie John would have bought mine a lot of the time, Willie John Dolan. So Willie John will be watching you here, and Peter as well. So just say hello to Peter, guys, and the whole Willie John family. How are you doing?
Up in Killeter there. Right, who else is with us then? Let's have a quick look and see who else is tuned in tonight. Bobby Clinton's here. Looking forward to the show. Bobby Clinton, Galway, wet and windy in Galway, reckons good to have you here. Terence Patterson. So, yeah, these guys all coming out of the woodwork now, Kenny. Hello, wet again, windy in Cork. John Black says, good show, Trevor. We've only just got going. We'll see how that comes later on. Hi, Mick, how are you? Hi, Pete. There's literally hundreds of these. David Lamb's in already. Drew Hull, looking forward to a good night. So am I. With these boys, it can only be good. Hi, Niall. Good to see you. Hello, Neil. Neil's in Port Talbot Motor Club, man. We've got a couple of questions from him later on. Hello, Rurik. Friday nights are good in Mullingar, and we've got this. Matt Prentice. What's the secret in winning Lurgan Park? Well, we'll bring back Lurgan Park Rally. We'll come back to that one a little bit later. We'll log that one for now. John Orr's watching Killelea, and they're all starting to tag each other. There's my sister. She'll be giving it off to me later on for not shaving. Drew's tagging people. Tom Devaney. Ian Cummins. I think Ian would need to be watching. Bobby Willis is there. Bobby was on a couple of weeks ago. It's good to see Bobby's here. I hold her flat, even so. Still got a caliber cap that Kenny gave me at Lurgan Park one year as a youngster, and I was over the moon. We're all still youngsters now. Kenny's even a youngster, aren't you, Kenny?
Well, I feel like one.
Age is only a number, isn't it? Did you fall in the bill of barley straw, Trevor? Yeah, I did. Sumo 1 to Sumo 2. This is going to be a cracker. John McLean's watching. Yeah, I've covered that bit. Harry Brown can wait. Some crack. Chris McLean. You remember Chris from DGM then?
Yeah.
Michael Kimber from the West Birmingham contingency. Bobby Wilkinson. Good old Bobby. Bobby just sorted my beard out, couldn't he? This turned out to be a rough night.
Bobby was in today looking a bit for a strimmer.
Was he?
He was. Yeah.
Cool. How is your business going then?
Absolutely flying. I mean, everybody wants a lawnmower, so I think it almost says something about rally cars that we shouldn't even be running them. Last year was one of our best years, you know. Just every gardener in the country, you know, they wanted out in their gardens, and you know, we were doing a lot of road cars for people that you know, going to work on that sort of stuff, you know. So yeah, very good.
So you lost it in the rally preparation business, but gained in the lawnmowers. Was it sort of breaking even, or?
It's not often that you'd have Sam McKinstry and Sean McElhern, you know, working at lawnmowers. And believe it or not, they're actually enjoying it, you know.
Were they?
Well, at least that's what they told me, you know.
That soundboy is quick.
I'm glad to hear that, because if anything I can think of right now, I'd love to see Sam working on a lawnmower.
That soundboy is quick in his day in navigation rallies as well. I can remember I used to navigate him. I could never afford to navigate Kenny, so I used to jump in with Sam.
You remember in one of the navigation rallies, he put the Capri off. It was snowing, and he put the Capri off somewhere, and he managed to get her home in Maggie's Riley Elf. It was sitting in the driveway. So they back out again, and it was up, belly down, up behind us where one of the time controls were. So they joined that time control again. But also so much snow. And they just continued on ahead until the finish of the rally. And then somebody realised they'd swapped cars. Obviously got excluded, like, but that's the sort of devilment my brother was up to, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember Bobby Campbell's Avenger?
Man, I do.
The flat of our one. That's the one I used to jump in 15 years of age, I think it was, Circuit of Down. I think we finished 6th in the Circuit of Down maybe one year.
Yeah, it's a good car now.
I had something similar with Trevor Turkington. You know Turk. So Colin Turkington's dad were... 2000. Yeah, I think Harry Burke might have been navigating them on a North Armagh rally, and it was... the petrol halt was at Logilly. You know, the petrol station Logilly there. So we reckon it a good idea for me to jump in at age 15 to do the second half just for a bit of experience. Aye, which you did with Turk. A quick driver in his day as well, wasn't he?
Very, very quick. Turk was one of the quickest boys in the navigation side of things.
Definitely was. Yeah, I think we were third quickest maybe in the second half of the rally. Something like that, remind me. So there you go. That's the start of it. Like, Roy Dempster, legend doesn't come any better than this. Looking forward to these stories. King Kenny, gentleman. There you go. And we'll look at some of Roy's photographs later on. So Francis Dempsey, Kenny, you're to blame for me falling in love with rallying when I was 4-year-old, listening to the legacy at my local rally in Longford. Also, it's because you have gone to Barbados twice and you're a legend over there. Once we mentioned we're from Ireland, they would ask, did we know you? So Barbados, guys, that's just an amazing thing. Let's just go there. We'll cover that one now then.
Yeah.
Go on ahead, your story about how the Barbados thing came about.
Well, I mean, Robbie could probably fill you in more than me, but basically, in the Caliber days, we had won the Tarmac Championship. Wow, look at that for a picture.
That's a body there. 2 bodies, really, isn't it?
Oh, boy, I tell you, I'm 2 fit boys there.
Hey,
And that's Tony Leake on the left-hand side.
Dunlop.
Dunlop.
Yeah.
And we brought him out to Barbados with us.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Tony Leake was always fairly dry of himself. You know, you couldn't really get him talking. We couldn't get him to shut up. Like, you see, once we got him out to Barbados and he seen that we were all okay, like,
Uh-huh.
he just absolutely loved it. I mean, Plum Tyndall and all was there. The crack was mighty. You know, and the people in Barbados were so good to us the whole time. But basically, I think, and Robbie can figure this one out, but I think it was more or less, once we had won the Tarmac Championship, they wanted to do something fairly special. And I think Robbie had put the plan to them, basically, let's do something completely different. And believe it or believe it not, I think, Robbie, was it Circuit of Ireland we done, and then the car needed to go onto a plane for to fly to Barbados. And we had a dummy run at putting it onto 747, so that it went into the hold, so had to take bumpers and all that stuff off. But go on ahead, Robbie. I'm sure you can remember parts of the deal that went on.
I think Plum was saying last week that it was through him, actually. The people in Barbados said to Plum, do you know anybody who would come over and would be spectacular, etc., etc.? And he could only think of one crew and one set of people who would enjoy the crack. So you were nominated, I think, fairly quickly.
There you go. Yeah.
What do you remember, Robbie, about it?
The car out there to begin with, but we had to get it then on the plane back again because was it Donegal then? We needed it back, I think, for Donegal to get to do it. So, yeah.
So some of the stories, a load of boys from Banbridge and McKinstry Motorsport team going to Barbados. Is there any story you can actually tell us?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was probably lots, even the second time round. Robbie didn't go the second time round, and we basically decided that, you know, because the island was so small, that I reckon that I could probably drive the stages, you know, from what I had learned whenever Robbie and I were there. And Gary Brown, he said he would co-drive.
Oh, I didn't know that. Right.
Yeah. So, of course, whenever we got out there and we started to make notes and that, Gary just didn't think it was for him. So him and Sam, they went to a bar, and they found a guy there who was mad keen on rallying. Actually a very good driver himself, and he was from Barbados. So they done a deal with him that he would take over, and we arrived down into reception the next morning for breakfast. And this guy comes along and he says, Kenny McKinstry, and I said, yeah. He says, I'm doing co-driver for you for the rest of the rally. And I says, all right, okay. I knew nothing about it. So in jumped this guy, Sean, you call him, jumped into the car. He had never done notes before. He had done very well a few times in the rally. And we made notes, and we just had to make them very simple notes. So it was just put basically what he was going to say on one line. And we ended up winning the rally. I mean, you couldn't believe it, like you couldn't make it up, you know. And we ran into all sorts of problems during the night halt. We had been leading the event, and a clutch release bearing had seized. We worked all night at the car, taking turns out of the work because it was so hot. And we got into a garage that didn't have any aircon in it. my goodness, unbelievable. But we done 6 stages the next day with a wheel bearing of a Massey Ferguson tractor as a clutch release bearing. And we put, this guy gave us coconut grease, would you believe, for to put on the bearing. It just was a taper wheel bearing. And we had to take the engine out of the car and set the engine down onto the gearbox so that the release bearing, because it was 2 parts, wouldn't fall off. And you know, it done the rest of the rally. We won the rally half a minute or something like that. We just couldn't believe it.
How did you work out that a taper bearing from a Massey Ferguson would fit a Subaru Legacy?
Well, that's a bit of a long story. What we had again was we pulled it out to see what had happened. We thought it was actually the clutch, but it was actually the clutch release bearing.
Right.
And we had searched the place, and this was just a general garage that done cars and whatever. So we couldn't get a clutch release bearing that would do, which is normally 1-piece bearing. And I said, look, if we can get some sort of a bearing, and this guy who was the stores man, he brought, I don't know how many bearings that he brought to us. And eventually we got one bearing. I mean, it was flopping about all over the place. But we reckoned if we got it in there, there was no way that it could get out. So we put the whole thing together, and lo and behold, it stayed there. Yeah,
fantastic.
And it only needed. We done part of the night. What actually had happened, Trevor, was the main two guys that we were competing against, because the clutch had failed. We weren't able to put our foot in the clutch and get it into gear.
Yeah.
So the co-driver got out. I was pressing the starter button, and he was running alongside the car and pushing at the same time.
Yep.
Then jumping in, putting the belts on. They never bothered taking our times again because they thought they were going to be rubbish. Mm-hmm. But with an F2 car, as you well know, the minute you do the start line,
no clutch needed.
You need the clutch. You just put it. So we were still doing fastest times, which they couldn't believe. And once we got the clutch sorted out, we only needed to do 6 stage starts the following day, which we did and won the rally. You know.
And the moral of the story is, any negotiations that start in the pub and any plans put together in the pub clearly are successful. So more of that as you go through.
I think that little story there, Trevor, just sums up the entire ethos of the organisation.
The philosophy. You'd know about company cultures, wouldn't you, in your days over the years?
Well, that was an example where you always knew that if you had £1, you needed to make it work as hard as £2 in that team. And second of all, you'll notice that it was the co-driver doing all the pushing.
So
that was the other thing. When it come to the heavy lifting, there was only one person going to be doing it.
Yeah. Do you remember, Robbie, on what was it? It was the end of the first day, the time we went to Barbados, and something happened. The electronics had overheated or something on the Legacy. We could see the finish. We could see the finish line, Trevor. Now, if you can imagine us suited and booted and all that there, I don't know what the temperature was, 35, 40 degrees, I mean, stinking hot. And us two boys out pushing that Legacy to try and get it over the finish line, which we did, and we lost our lead, obviously. But we ended up, we won the rally by 1 second, if you can remember, Robbie.
And we won at the stage after that. So we pushed the car out, got it sorted again, and the stage after that was where they did a hill climb in it. And it was one way up, so you got to run up to the top of the hill, and then everybody waited up there to see what the time was. But when we were doing the run up anyway, and we were running now at the back of the field, somebody had dropped oil on one of the corners, and we got a big slew on coming up through that. And there was a boy wagging a flag or a yellow flag or something on it anyway. But when we got to the top of the hill, anyway, I thought maybe it would be worth talking to the organisers and telling them that we were obstructed because of the flag and would need a second go at it. And lo and behold, they bought into the story and sent us back to the bottom of the hill. So we'd had the practice run up it, and then, but geez, we got another run to the top of the hill on it and took another bunch of seconds out of the time, which helped us to the 1 second win at the end of the rally.
Yeah.
You had to be thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
Again, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Oh,
that's always the ethos, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Rory Candy reckons that your shirt matches the poster on the wall, Hawaii 5-0, Robbie.
That's it. I cut one of them posters down and made the wee shirt for myself for the show.
That's it. I think that's what you've done, all right. John Skinner's watching. Good old mate of yours.
That's dangerous. There's a whole lot of things then we'll not be able to say about the Isle of Man.
Aye. That's your co-driver as well, didn't he win Lurgan Park with you at one point?
He did indeed. Hey, you see, there you go. I should remember things like that sort of shit. But another hell of a good guy too.
Yeah.
It's some great events now. Giving Skinner a hard time trying to catch us doing recce's and stuff, you know.
Yeah. Just a brilliant family altogether. Who else have we got? Paul Hagan, quite an intro, and a good man. Angus is there. This is Angus's shirt, so Great Worth Classics. I got that on. Keep him right. So Laura McMenamin, Robbie, is Laura Fury, you remember her as?
Oh, yeah.
So the whole Fury family usually watch as well. So looking forward to it. Dave Welford.
It's probably a good opportunity. Kenny was always friends with the organisers, but I should probably apologise to organisers around the world because the stuff has been done. One of the reasons I had to leave the country.
You were like a whippet, weren't you? A little terrier time's going after them. Dave Welford, who looks after the Richard Burns fan page. He's got Colin McLean. So Colin McMaster from McLean is putting a video, I think, on this weekend on Dave's site. So how much did Kenny enjoy his battles of Bertie and the Subaru legacies back in the day? So Bertie and Rory, from the both of your point of view. So just might be a good idea just to have a chat about that now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we only had probably a couple of years, battles, direct battles with Bertie and Rory. Most of the time, Robbie and I would have been in a Group N car. And it was only in the sort of latter years, whenever I ended up going into a legacy, that I suppose we were competing directly with the top boys, if you know what I mean. We did have some cracking results with the Group N car. It was a bloody quick car. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a fantastic thing. And we had it well modified and everything was working super, So, yeah. Lurgan Park and stuff like that, Bertie just didn't like that particular place. But, Lurgan Park was a sort of a place where you just needed to be nimble, you needed to be sort of driving all the stages clean without any mistakes. And, I seen where somebody wanted to know how you win in Lurgan Park, and I think that was probably the secret to it. I mean, in my early days, I grew up, doing quarry sprints, big gravel, mini stage roads, stuff like that. Being able to start, I mean, if I done a hill climb, for instance, usually my practice run would be quicker than my actual timed runs. So it suited what I was doing, So... Yeah.
So John McElroy, you'll know, who was a Banbridge man and started off in Motor News. Well, it started off before that, but Motor News became the editor of Autosport and now has worked right the way up to normal automotive press. He works for Auto Express now, but he was the editor of Autocar. He sent a question as well about Lurgan Park in particular. So which of his rivals does he count as the fastest? The one where he looked at stage times after a couple of stages and thought, wow, this is a big fight on this one. Is there one particular person? Was you a bit of a nemesis in Lurgan Park, or was it just a different person every year?
Yeah, well, there was always people there who were obviously going to be quick. Yeah, I mean, Gwyneth Evans came with a very quick car and obviously a very professional driver. He went very hard and he won the event. Darren Gass, You know, whenever Darren was doing the rally, you knew he was going to be quick. Gary Jennings, well, what can you say?
Yeah.
I was always going to be quick. They always give me a hard time, no matter where he was, like, you know. So, Kevin Lynch, if you think about what Kevin Lynch was doing, you know, I mean, Kevin won the rally quite a few times. So all of those boys had the potential, you know, of putting it together. Kevin Lynch in particular was, you know, a very good driver on both gravel and tarmac. So, you know, a lot of the stage was gravel, and you were doing it with tarmac tires. So you really didn't have a lot of grip. So what you done was you got the car moving and then just let it float between the corners. That was the only thing that you could do.
Just guiding it more than trying to fight it. Just
exactly. So you needed the speed, you know, you needed the speed up, and it was just trying to keep it, you know, keep it constant was, yeah.
momentum and guiding it and letting us happen.
So there's a lot of people there, you know, in the top 10. You know, Davy Greer won it 1 year as well. I had made a small mistake earlier on. Not saying that would have made the difference, but it didn't help, because once you lose time in Lurgan Park, it's gone. You know, the stages are 2.5 miles long, so it's not like, you know, you get into a 10 or 12 minute stage. You know, the whole rally is probably 16 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it just needs to be all good equal stage times, you know.
And definitely in the early days, it was a lucrative piece of business for you to win Lurgan Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the first time I won Lurgan Park was $5,000. And then they realised that it was probably too much, and they wanted to spread it down the field a bit, and that was great. And then I think the second time, well, not the second time, but whenever the money was good, another time I got $2,500. Of course, Maggie, she nabbed it and bought furniture with it.
Well, I suppose the right way to keep, all Maggie needed was a decent car, wasn't it? Did she have a GTE Nova at one point after the Riley?
Yeah, she had a Riley Elf, and then she had a GTE Nova on the Civic.
Yeah.
You know, the wee quick ones. Then she had one of the GT Corollas, which was a lovely wee car, which Robbie and I took the side off. I don't know if you remember it or not, Pete.
Good skills.
I remember the day we wrecked Maggie's car in the wrecking. And I tell you what, I walked home, for I wasn't going back to the garage to explain why the whole side was tore out of it.
And the thing about it was it wasn't even our fault. We were going to a stage to do the recce for the Ulster Rally, and we were crossing out from across by Dromore somewhere, out over towards Moira, and we just met this girl going to work in the morning, back whole side out of Maggie's wee Corolla, like, you know.
And Maggie wasn't that hard to please, like, as long as she had a decent car and the odd holiday in Canada to see her sister, then she was happy enough, wasn't she?
It was about the height of it, and she'd done a bit of sponsorship herself in the very early days, you know, buying a bit of Kleber road tire or rally tires for me as well.
Right.
Yeah, and she'd done a couple of rallies until her father basically put a stop to it.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she done, I don't know whether you can remember or not, we done a rally just outside Lurgan.
Okay.
And it basically started off, I think, Robbie, you were maybe with John McGaffin, weren't you?
We both wrecked on the first stage. We both hit trees.
Yeah, and basically I was first in the road, and of course down into a dip and a jump, but it went out sideways. You know, it was a track out across the road. It wasn't a straight track. It was an angle, and I hit it. And of course, about 50, 60, 70 yards after that was where I crashed quite badly. And Maggie had whiplash and a black eye. And
right. So that's the reason why she was banned then.
Well, yeah. Her dad wasn't too happy now that we had 2 kids, and yeah.
She used to be in the passenger seat of the gravel note car quite a bit as well, though, didn't she? Over
all the time, you know, it didn't matter. It was maybe with Davy Greer or you know, whoever was doing gravel, yeah, she would read the notes. We still do gravel for Kevin Barrett.
Really?
Yeah, and all the national rounds, we would go down Saturday evening and do the stages and then head back home on a Sunday afternoon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of us getting out of the house for a wee holiday, like a weekend's holiday.
Excellent. Okay, so Robbie, you're on holiday in Hawaii and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. So just in case your family come back and demand that you go off and do holiday things with them, just talk us through the whole Caliber side of things, because I think that's really interesting as to how we got them involved in the sport and how that all came about, because I think a lot of people will be interested in that. Just by the way, we've 340 people watching us live here at the minute, so there's a few people interested.
There's one thing I do want to go back on, because on one of the questions there, it was about the competition with Bertie and Rory in the Subaru days. And yeah. I think although people would have seen a lot of the competition, obviously, on the stages, and that was great, it sometimes hides the fact that we were both in a relatively new car in those days. And even though there were pro-drive engineers and whatever that was around, there was a lot of swapping of information back and forward between Kenny and Bertie, just on the way in which the car was set up, on the way in. I remember Bertie had an issue with the car.
I love that photo. That is just brilliant.
Yeah, they loved each other. I'm too pleased. But there was a fair amount of sharing of information, and even on the recce in the Isle of Man, we would get together with Bertie and Rory and talk through some of the notes and things like that before it. So it wasn't always that we were head to head. We were on the stages, but apart from that, there was good camaraderie there as well.
Yeah, he didn't like getting beat in the golf, Robbie. Sure, he didn't.
No, he didn't. He wasn't. Amongst us, he was probably the best golfer. I'll have to give him that at that stage, but that wasn't saying a lot because we weren't good. But we did our best, and it was the only thing that we had to entertain ourselves on long recce's when you were away for maybe a week or 2 weeks. We'd go and play golf in the afternoon because we recce'd generally at night time, and we'd wreck golf courses the length and breadth of Europe. Yes, in the island in particular.
Cynthia Fury sent me a message just to ask me how your golf was, Kenny, if you were getting any better with the bats.
Well, tell her I still have the lumpy bat anyway.
You can tell her she's watching.
Right, Cynthia, yeah. We're definitely going to have to get the bats out again and do a bit. Hopefully maybe this year in Donegal or something like that. Yeah, that would be super to do that. Yeah,
you'd be going some to beat Cynthia, though. Okay, Robbie, carry on to the Caliber side of things.
No, on the Caliber thing, again, there's a sort of a belief that I brought Caliber to rallying, but that's not really the way it happened. I think the fact was that it. All
right, then. Well, we'll see you later. Then that's the reason we got you on, just to tell the story. So we'll get him back.
The opportunity. So it was Kenny, I think, had given me the lead. I think it was through you, Pete, that the lead had come anyway. And it just happened that from a business point of view, I did quite a bit of marketing work with Guinness at that time. So I went to see the brand team that were involved with Caliber. And originally we'd tried to get Guinness, the main brand, because that was where obviously the big funds were. And we'd wanted them involved, and we put proposal there trying to explain that there were plenty of drinks companies involved in motorsport around the world, but they didn't want that. Didn't want involved in it from a Guinness brand point of view. They felt it enough, but Caliber had at that stage a reasonable budget to put together, and obviously enough of a budget that bought all that material to buy 2 big rallies.
I was going to say the radio call sign is probably spot on.
My Aunt May would have said them's 2 well-mended boys.
There's a better one.
Showing up for that one. Look at that.
Yeah.
God, those were the days. But we put the proposal to them anyway, and they bought in for the Circuit of Ireland. So for one event, really, just to see how those things that would go. And we had a real good run on the circuit that year, obviously winning Group N with them and fairly high up on the overall standings on the event. And then on the back of that, we were able then to talk to them more directly about about the funding that was required then to finish off the rest of the year. And from that, then, we got in, they began to understand how we could take this on as a bigger event for their brand. And we were, 4 or 5 years, I guess, involved with Calibre. And we went from just doing the rallies to, as Kenny said earlier, going to do the event in Barbados. We had an attempt. We wanted to get the brand off the back page just on sports and into other parts of publications or press. And we started to do fitness program, if you can believe that, or a lifestyle program, because their brand kind of fitted into that side of things. And really, it just really developed. And I think the thing from a rallying point of view, it just looked so big and professional looking, although we were stitching it together at the time. Yeah. And we started to notice then other teams were starting to do exactly the same sorts of things. So we had all the teams that then really upped their game in terms of the look and feel of rallying at that stage. So I'd like to think that the way in which we had developed the relationship with Calibre then just helped rallying to become more professional looking.
Yeah, well, team meetings and service schedules and movement schedules and all that type of thing, that they didn't really exist in McKinstry Motorsport up to that point, it's fair to say, Kenny.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Robbie pulled us all together without a shadow of a doubt. Apart from being a will blow his head up because he was a very good co-driver. And I've just had the privilege of having so many good co-drivers. And whenever you have somebody in the car like that, it makes it easy. I remember reading a proposal that Robbie had put together for Calibre. He sent it to me. I didn't think he was talking about me, the way he could arrange words that make it look good,
Yeah. What was the attraction to co-driving Kenny then at the time, Robbie? Can you remember? Because as I say, when we started out doing navigation rallies and even me doing controls, I would see you 3 or 4 times in the same night at one control. So we were
lucky. There was times I was on roads that nobody else was on.
You were getting good value for money.
I was that bad at it that I had to buy my own Mark II Escort and yet another bike to drive. Oh, that was the very first rally. Yes, that was as good as it got near the start line.
Right.
But I did. Go ahead, Trevor.
This is a fairly decent bit of sign writing on this car. It was the first thing I've noticed there.
Those were peel-off stickers that me and the other boy there is Gary McGaffin. He took me on this first rally. We persuaded the company that had taught us both to drive that they'd give us 25 quid as sponsorship to go and do a North Armagh rally. I don't know, it was the autumn one or what event it was, but off we went and did it anyway. That was me hooked. And then I bought a car.
Is that Gary McGaffin? Is that the Gary McGaffin worked in the Northern Bank in Market Hill?
That's right. That's the very same boy. You would know all about that. He was at school with me, you see, and he wanted to be a driver, and I knew I couldn't drive. So best thing was I had to go with the organising side of it.
Are you still in touch with him?
Yes, I'm still in touch with Gary. More so actually with Gary's son. Now I help with some advice on a business that Gary's son and daughter-in-law are involved with. So yeah, I still connect with them, talking a bit more about things like Formula One with them these days than the rallying. But yeah, still in touch with them.
Brilliant. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. So that you went from that and into the Davy Robinson era.
The Davy Robinson. So Davy drove the car and had to work on the car. And then he got that, allowed him to go rallying as long as he didn't shout at me whenever I got the navigation wrong and the whole thing. And Kenny, he was class 1, if I remember correctly. Sam was in class 2.
Yeah.
And pretty quick in class 2. And I think we were down in the novices or class 3. So you could see us multiple times coming in different directions to time. Yeah. We were making it up again as we went.
See, that's the bit that I remember. And the next thing, you're sitting with Kenny McKinstry and Mark Lovell and people like that. And I'm scratching my head and saying, so what's he done then that I haven't been able to do?
I was just very lucky because when I went, because I worked then with Newry Motor Club, and helped organise some of the events. And then that's how I met John McGaffin. And of course, John was one of Kenny's regular co-drivers at that stage. But
Yes.
John was driving now, so I co-drove for him. And then lo and behold, there was an event that Kenny had no co-driver from. And I think John nominated me to step up and take that. And
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was just a coincidence of knowing a few people, and that's where it went.
Wow. So in the early days, Kenny, we're talking about some looking boy there, a nice head of hair, eh?
Yeah, that's whenever I had hair. Yeah.
So this is the original car I remember. So Richard Dillon rallying, Richard Dillon stuck by you. Like a lot of your backers over the years, once they're on board, they stay on board. We already talked about Kevin Doyle, talked about Kevin Barrett at Triton, Tom Gertie, all those guys. But I remember this car right at the start.
Yeah. I suppose that was the car that I used for work and drove about in, and that was probably, our first rally car. And we would have done sprints and hill climbs and all that sort of stuff. And then John McGaffin and I would have progressed. And I think I can remember doing the first gravel rally that we ever done in the south. And it was Wicklow Forest. And what do you call him? Hugh O'Brien won it. Dwight Cathcart was second in his wife's Lotus Sunbeam, and we finished third overall. So that was our first dip into gravel rallying. John would have sat with me all the time doing navigation rallies and that. Another guy, Alan McKee, Drew Todd, sat with me on not so many events.
Yeah.
But we immediately moved up from class 2 to class 1 once the like of Drew Todd sat with me, because he was just, really, really good. And, John McGaffin actually got to that level as well, where John still has maps where, inch to the mile maps, you would know what they would be forever.
She did, yeah.
Yeah, they were so accurate. And if he could show you where, the road was around a corner or whatever, so much. Marked maps is basically what they were.
I had this debate with Bobby Willis not that long ago about the difference in 1-inch maps and 50,000. I always found 1-inch maps were better to read. They were better to read the road off. They're more accurate that way, weren't they?
Huge difference. John McGaffin and I done the Circuit of Ireland one year. And we led all the Group 1 guys in the north of Ireland, simply because everybody thought we had pace notes. There was no such thing as pace notes then.
Yeah.
I can remember going into a place in South Armagh called Dead Man's Hill.
Yeah, it's up 5 miles where I lived, yeah.
Yeah, and John McGavin says, whenever we went into it, he says, look, this is the most difficult stage on the whole rally. Let's just get through it.
Yeah.
And the amount of time that we took off our competitors was unreal, something like 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Because the way he was reading those maps, it was back to the navigation days. It was just unbelievable. Now, that's to say, whenever we headed into the south, the boys all caught up with us again. You know what I mean? I can remember Austin McHale taking a minute and a second off me in Mall's Gap.
Mall's Gap or Sally Gap? Mall's Gap. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was in the Circuit of Ireland. That was the same rally.
Would he have been the black escort at that time then?
It probably was, and I think maybe John McGee or some of those guys maybe sitting with him at the time. But that was the start of I suppose the Group 1 RS 2000 days, and the Silkaline car and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah. Brilliant. So that was the Mark 1 days, and then the Mark 2, and then it developed into, it grew a little bit with arches, and you went to the forests in it. So the navigation rallies, you used, I suppose, a BDA for a while, but then started to do more and more stage rallies in it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, we used the BDA on one rally, and that was up in around Antrim, and basically the police put an end to it, and there were selectives and stuff at that time, which were like special stages. There's no doubt about it. Like, we never ever thought that they were dangerous, but probably looking at it back now, you certainly couldn't do it now because
no chance.
So many more cars on the road. But at that particular time, it was fine. But basically, that whole thing was stopped then, in navigation rallies, and it got to be those regularity rallies and stuff like that. It slowed the whole thing down a bit.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
We moved on to just 2 special stages. Yeah.
And doing it properly, as we saw before.
Yeah.
Big skids.
Yeah, and that's I think Kevin Doyle sitting in there. Like,
yeah.
I remember a wee story about Kevin Doyle. Like, we were doing the hills of Donegal, and Kevin was sitting with me. And again, there's no notes or anything, and we come out of the end of what do you call that stage? Atlantic Drive. We come out of the end of Atlantic Drive, and we had something wrong with the car. And down the road section like mad, and the boys were sitting waiting. And they got into it and started doing what they had to do. And we were running really late to get into the next stage.
Yeah.
And I can remember tossing off down the road as hard as we could go. And I says to Kevin, whenever we get stopped here, there's a whole, the traffic jam of cars going up into the stage in a wee narrow road. So I, Kevin, run you up and book into the control and get our time. So, of course, Kevin, he gets out of the car and does a bit of a stroll up the road. Like, there wasn't much running out of him. The next thing I seen him stop and talking to somebody. I thought, what the hell is he doing? Then Bobby Willis, who was running late as well, I'm not sure who he was sitting with, he knew what was happening. He just seen Kevin standing with a time card in his hand, snapped it out of his hand and run on like blazers on up the road.
Good man, Bobby.
And yes, and basically clocked us into, and we didn't lose the time. I actually think I won the rally on that particular occasion. But it was down to, and then whenever Kevin got back into the car, I says, Kevin, why did you stop with those guys up the road? I was trying to get the football results, he said.
He's a big down man, wasn't he? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
That was just Kevin, and cool. Great man. Now, he supplied a lot of sponsorship to us over the years. Not necessarily in money terms, but just helping out with fuel and cars and all that sort of stuff.
Of course, Mark and Rory went on to do well in rallying as well. Yeah. Rory was sending the message earlier, so absolutely brilliant and good relationship.
Yeah, so probably Mark didn't stay rallying, but was very, very quick, very good driver.
Yeah. Indeed. But sometimes it went a wee bit askew. I don't mean to bring back memories here. It wasn't that much like in comparison, so that wasn't too bad, that damage, was it?
No, you need to see the other side of it.
You got away with that, apart from the fact that that's the other side of it.
That's Robbie's side.
That's Robbie's side.
I remember that one.
Yeah, because that didn't end too well, did it?
If I remember, you know the story, Pete. You remember more than I do of that accident.
I can remember carrying you bollocks on the back, and I said to you, if your leg wasn't broke, it would be broke by the time I got you to hospital.
You carried him out in your back.
Yeah. He couldn't walk.
I could walk. I could walk when I got out of the car far enough to put the triangle out, because I still wasn't that much shock of the whole thing. We'd taken out like 2 big granite gate pillars, if you remember, Pete.
That's right.
With that front corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after I put the triangle down, I thought, right, I better sit down here. And then I had to get you, and you put me on your back and carried me to the next junction, which was a fair distance. It wasn't like just round the corner.
Yeah, well, it would certainly, it felt it was a fair distance. Probably, I would say it was the best part of half a mile, like, till where we could get a. I'm not sure why we got an ambulance or just a car or something, but got you to the hospital. Like,
we got an ambulance because they hooked me onto the, that stretcher thing and put me into the back of it. And then the two boys leapt in the front, but they hadn't clipped the stretcher properly into the side of the ambulance. So I was now fully floating in the back of this thing as they went down the stage.
Oh,
on the whole.
yes, of course, yeah.
And I would, every time they braked, I'd hit the front of it, and I accelerated, I'd hit the back doors and strapped in. And I'm thinking, geez, if those back doors open, I'm going to have a second accident on this car, on this rally. So, and the first one hadn't gone well, but they got me in and they put the plaster on, and then you took me to a dance or something that Saturday night or the Sunday night.
Well, this is Newcastle West direction, was it? Circuit of Munster.
Well, it was
Yeah,
Circuit of Munster.
Right.
That's where it was. Oh, mad.
Okay.
Absolutely mad.
Yeah.
Right. Before we go any further, we're going to get somebody else to join us now. So we're bringing it right up to date with the latest co-driver. The guy who's been with you for over 20 years now. So Noel Orr's here as well. Hi, Noel. How are you?
Good. Yes, just flown back from Hawaii there. Sorry, missed you, Robbie.
Is that Hawaii and County Down? Like, yeah.
You didn't get much of a tan.
No.
That's a strange place to isolate then, but
yeah, I'm disappointed now. Kenny's had about a quarter of a Bacardi and he's already had broken the seal. By the looks of it, he disappeared there for a few minutes.
He did, yeah. I think he went to stock up on the Bacardi more than the other side of things. So, how's you, Noel? You busy as always?
Yeah, trying to keep the wolf from the door in these weird times. Yeah, it's like everybody. Lucky I'm in an industry that's allowed to work, thankfully, in construction. So, we're still ticking over.
Hasn't missed a day yet.
No, right since lockdown, been in the office every day. So it's the only way to keep you sane.
Excellent. Okay. We're just going through the early part of this career then. When do you first remember Kenny McKinstry then? What's your first recollection of the guy you went on to co-drive for over 20 years?
Oh, like everybody, as soon as I became aware of rallying, I mean, Michael was on this a couple of weeks ago and he was talking about our first experience. We didn't come from a rallying family at all. I didn't know rallies existed until coming home from my granny's house in Newtownards one Easter, and there was the rally cars were leaving Bangor, and we stopped, and the noise and the colour, and what's this? Now my family knew so little about it that actually they had me convinced there was only one rally a year, which was the Circuit of Ireland. So there was no pressure from me to go and see rallies. So anyway, eventually when you pick it up and you start to get your own independence, you're reading the papers and you see the names. And of course, Kenny was legendary even in those days to me, sliding the Mark II around. And Lurgan Park, and I would have gone to watch Lurgan Park when I was a young teenager. I can still remember standing just at the back gate. When you come off the gravel bit, drop down onto the main straight, you turn right, and then you take a next wee slot in the right to go over the bridge. And I was standing there with my older brother, and it was just between stages were getting set up. This is when the days you could stand close to corners and things. And Kenny arrives on foot or on the bike and jumps off, and there was this huge rhododendron bush, and he just walks right through the middle of it. And he comes out the other side and just looks and says, "There's not much in there." So of course, fast forward about 15 minutes, and he has the nose of the car right the way through the big bush. Those bushes are all gone now. But so obviously then when I was starting off navigating, I was just doing what you do. You plug away, getting events here, there, and everywhere. And Kenny and Robbie were doing what they were doing at the top. I was sort of messing around in Novas and doing bits of like motoring news, and then I started to get a wee bit more experience, moved up to the sort of Group N, Group N, and Donegal and Killarney and bits and pieces like that. And Kenny and I only spoke really after I'd done a rally with Dennis Biggerstaff. It was Easter Stages, and which, if Dennis is watching, still probably the most uncomfortable car I've ever been in my life. With literally my knees were up here for a whole day. And after that, Dennis said Kenny made contact with Dennis just to see if I'd done a half decent job. And I went out and I did a bit of a test with Neil McKinnon in one of the Group A cars, I think. And then I was sitting in work one day, and the phone rang, and Kenny says, it was the receptionist says, right, it's Kenny McKinstry for you. And I was thinking, what? What's that? So he rang and he says,
clearly looking sponsorship.
Well, time would teach me that probably would have been the better conclusion. Anyway, he says, do you want to do a rally? And I says, well, yeah, but who with? And he says, with me. I said, right, okay. Now, what it turned out to be was, it was probably the only time that a rally cost us nothing, and it was Bobby King's Porsche in Killarney.
Yes, of course.
Now, now, Kenny is a supreme driver, but I'll tell you, he had to work very hard that weekend. I've never been. Now, this was my first introduction to a guy top of his game, and my first stage was with Bobby King's Porsche going up Moll's Gap in the wet on slick.
Nice.
And I still just remember halfway up just starting to laugh because it was just so ridiculous, and him swearing his way. What the f are you laughing at? Now, it was just such a ridiculous, it was surreal for me because even during the recce, like, we're stopping and talking to Bertie and Austin and all these guys, and they wouldn't have known who I was or whatever. And I still felt I was just a nobody anyway in the sport. So that was a brilliant opportunity, and I absolutely loved every second of it. And then after that, he asked me back. We did Cavan. This is 1998 now.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little bit, Noel, if that's okay. But we've got somebody who wants to ask a question here, Kenny. Is that okay if I bring somebody in that's got a question for you?
Of course, yeah.
Right. Hello, who are you? What's your name and what's your question for Kenny, please?
All right there, mate.
How are we doing, Kevin? How are you?
I'm good. Well, Robbie, Noel, Trevor.
How are you?
Hi, Kevin Barrett. How are you?
All good. Well, I mean, the most obvious question you could ever ask Kenny McKinstry is how long does it take to boil the proper boiled egg? We've had many a conversation about this around a table at rallies over the years. Kenny has theories about a 9-minute egg.
It's definitely not the question I was expecting that you'd be asking, but go on ahead, Dan. We need to find out what the perfect egg looks like or sounds like or feels like or tastes like.
The perfect egg, as Kevin well knows and we've discussed it many times, is that it depends on the size of the egg. So, and it depends where you start boiling the egg from as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So 5 minutes till 6 minutes, depending on the size of that big egg.
Right. Okay.
That conversation went on, Trevor, for 3/4 of an hour one night around the table in Mayo.
And there's no winner in a conversation like that. Like, nobody ever wins when you're talking about eggs. There's a thing I used to do because I always liked the poached egg. And I remember in the Vauxhall days, it was always a request just to see who listened to me. But I was quite specific in the way I wanted my poached egg. So I wanted one poached egg on one slice of brown toast buttered. And all the time that I did the tests and the rallies with Vauxhall, and that was a go-to breakfast for how many times did a waitress get that right?
Never.
Zero. Never come out. There's always 2 eggs, 2 bits of toast, 1 buttered, none not, and white bread. Nobody ever listened. It's hilarious. It's a great exercise that I use when I'm working just around listening skills and picking up on it. Here we are. Look at how rock and roll we are, talking about rally stories, and we're into eggs. So, Kenny, just talk to us about this man, Kevin Barrett, then, and how he's helped you out over the years, because it's got to be one of the biggest, not only with you, but Kevin as a man who's a rally man, a driver first and foremost, but the amount of money that he's put into rallying over the years, sponsorship of Lurgan Park, all sorts of things that I'm probably going to forget about here, but the relationship that the two of you have had over the years is quite phenomenal, isn't it? And you think about the commercial side of things and how those go. We think of the big ones are the Fishers and the Alumax or the Toughmax, but McKinstry and Triton Showers just seems to go on forever, yeah?
Yeah, I suppose. I had a chat with Kevin earlier on today because, as you well all know, I just don't remember things too well. But in 1992, I think Kevin brought me a Group N car that he had bought from Frank Fennell, maybe, and he was going to do Donegal, and he wanted to leave it up with us. Just to give it a check over to make sure that it was, producing the power that it should have been. So that was my first meeting with him. Later on, then, I'm not sure how long it was, but he ended up buying our Legacy in '98. I think it was maybe my Legacy, Kevin, was it?
Yeah, was it?
Yeah, and basically since then, we have been friends. So we go on holidays together. Martin Cairns, the six of us all head off and we go and do our own thing. So yeah, sponsorship has helped out ourselves for sure, as Emma as well at times whenever she was doing a championship. And we just have made it crack together. It's more sort of social now than anything else, but absolutely fantastic. Like,
Yeah. Kevin, what was the attraction for helping this man out in particular then?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Trevor, it was Maggie's cooking. Is what I keep.
Let's go back to the same theme.
Not to do with Kenny at all. No, Maggie is such a good character, and plays such a big part in that camp as Robbie alluded to earlier on. And like to this day, as you said, Kenny and Maggie still will do my gravel notes when we can run. But going back to my first time meeting Kenny was when I bought Frank Fennell's Group N Cosworth, and I left it up as Kenny. Look, I'm thinking of doing Donegal. That was my first time, and again, we'd have known Kenny McKinstry for years from watching him on the hedges, and we'd have been McHale people down here because Austin and Joe, the home place is only 2 miles from my house where I am now.
Yes.
But I left the Cosworth up anyway and was up there for a week or so, and I rang him and he says, yeah, that's ready, you can come on up. So went up and then said, Kenny, hi, it's Kevin, Cosworth. He says, hop into the side, passenger side there. He says, we'll just take it for a run and see what it is. So I, naive enough, just jumped into the passenger seat and clicked on the belts. Oh my God. I can still picture it.
And this is your car, remember?
This is my car.
Yeah.
He went over roads that obviously he knows well himself. And the rain was bouncing off the ground. And we done 6 or 7 miles and we came back in, heading into the Bank Bridge, and he had to stop at a junction. And I said, thank God we get to stop. But he just opened the door and he just leaned out and looked at the back and he said, hey, bye, she's on slicks. I said, oh, you.
It's good time to find out, eh?
Good time to find out just as you're coming back. But like, we all know how good a driver he was, and I would have trusted him. In fairness, there's very few drivers that I would get in with, but Kenny is one of them. And in fairness, he paid it back. He got in with me in Est in the Forest, and I know he wasn't getting with too many either. So yeah, it's been pretty good. And then we went to the Legacy in '98 about, and then '99 Kenny started running it, and I haven't looked back since. And as Kenny said, we've had fantastic times. We've had fantastic holidays, great friends. Met Robbie many's the time, Noel, all the gang. And it's a big family with the McKinstrys. In fairness, once you're in, you're in. Yeah. But don't blacken your name because you'll never get back in with all the gang that's there.
I know. It's just mad. And as I said earlier, you need thick skin if you're involved in that lot. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very delicate and I would like to make my way in there,
There's not one part of you that's delicate. That's all I can say. That's for sure.
Kevin, any other stories before we let you go? Then.
Well, there's a few that again, the case of the ones we can tell and the ones we can't tell.
Uh-huh.
But go back to Barbados. There's one that Kenny hasn't told, and I'll get him to tell you that later. It was the one about where he had food poisoning, because that's a great story.
Right.
But Kenny and myself, we were going out to John Hoglands in Norway, and we were flying out. There was only 2 of us, so we go into the plane and I done the safety briefing. And the air hostess came down and says, "Well, guys, where are you from?" And Kenny says, "I'm from Banbridge and County Down." And I said, I'm from Maynooth in Kildare. She says, Maynooth. And I says, yeah, Maynooth. And because we always had a big college here, and as a joke, as I would always say, that Maynooth, where all the priests come from.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. So flight took off, and it's 3 hours, and about every 20 minutes, this RSS was driving down with the little mini bottles. All you have in a Bacardi and a gin. Another 20 minutes, another one. And so after the boy were looking at each other, I said, we're getting well looked after here. The plane landed anyway, and we're just about to get off, and this air hostess came on down with a bag. He said, what's going on here? So he hands the bag, and he says, there you are. So she asked us, where are you going? We said, we're going ice racing in lakes in Norway. And now with the bag, she hands it to Kenny. She says, there you are now, Father. She says, there's a few drinks for you when you get to where you're going. You know, we were 2 priests. Now, how you could ever mistake the 2 of us for 2 priests? It's beyond me. But anyway, we ended up getting about 10 small ones out of it in the bag to take with us on our trip to John Hoglan. So,
And
it was a good day, good time.
And what were you going off to teach John Hoglan then, the 2 of you?
Well, how to take
about not the marriage, how it turned out. It all wasn't plain sailing. I think John spent more time standing on the sidelines than he did in the cars at the end of the day. He wasn't used to the Irish gang. We'd Ollie O'Donovan and Barry Goodman, Niall Maguire, or Barry Coleman.
That's some squad. My God.
It was a pretty thick when we got there, but and Kenny then he was going on was the time that Andrew Nesbitt was doing Sweden. So he headed on for Sweden. We were spending another 2 days in Norway before we headed back. But Kenny headed off on the Monday, and John Hoglan has a lockup, and he's very concerned about the keys of the lockup. But Kenny had a key because he wanted to get in there in the morning. So we were finished in Hoglan's, and we had we were in the hotel that night, and Kenny had gone to Sweden, and the guys we talked about earlier, Sean McIlhearn, and you know, there'd never be any, but there'd always have to be some sort of a twist on. So we're open, and he said, we'll wind Kenny up. So I got on the phone to Kenny, and I said, Kenny, have you the key to oh no, John Hogg said, Kenny has my key of the lockup. We said, oh, right. We said, so we're going to Sweden, we can give you a Sweden. He said, oh, that's fine. So I rang Kenny, and I said, Kenny, John Hoglan's looking for the key of his lockup. And Kenny says, but sure, I'm in Sweden. And I says, we know, but I said, he's going mad about this. I said, he's saying he has to get a fella down from Oslo. I said, it's like 200 miles. I says, he's going to charge 300 quid for this key. And Kenny went and listened.
That's all the savings that you had from those miniatures in Norway. Like all the savings had gone.
So he said, oh, my God, he was just go mad. And we said, look, what can we do? He said, oh, look, pay him. He said, pay him. But he said, wait till I see him. And we hung up and we never thought any more about it. So we got to Sweden 3 days later, and Kenny was marching about, and he was totally blanking John Hoglan. And in fairness, we'd had a few shandies at the time, and we never realised that we forgot to tell Kenny it was a wind-up. It was about 3 months later, we were doing a rally, and again, we were having a few drinks, and we said, oh, just Kenny, remember the wind-up with John Hoglan about the key? He said, what wind-up? It was about the key. I said, he never gave out about the key. He said, that was all a joke. He said, you never told me that. I said, oh, we must have forgotten. He said, I spent the whole of Sweden, he says, avoiding that like the plague. He's not in there for what he had done. Well, the man hadn't done anything. But like, you know, like I said, these were wind-ups that always went on in that camp, in fairness. You know?
I know.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's great to have you on, Kevin. We couldn't have done a show like this without getting you involved. And I'm sure from Kenny's point of view, he appreciates the help over the years. It's
been great. I've been watching all night, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see Robbie. But Robbie, surely there must be some essential needs you have in Hawaii that you can get an engineer and a Triton Showers engineer as an essential journey that we can get out there and get us some.
There must be a rally or something out here. I'll have a look around when I'm here and just see if there's anything we can get an excuse to get everybody out for.
As long as it's essential, we'll be all right. We can get there.
Trevor, if you don't mind, I have a question for Noel there.
Go on ahead.
Because I thought I heard him say earlier on that he did a rally and he didn't have to pay when he was with Kenny.
You see, that's why I never did a rally with Kenny McKinstry. I could never afford it.
Lawyers involved here if I find out that he wasn't paying for anything.
Well, I tell you, I rally car with Kenny McKinstry, and I always have to pay. So
And all
That's two of us, Kevin. That's two of us.
my co-drivers paid.
Yeah.
Simple as that. There's only
I would have to say that probably whenever we met up to sort of discuss doing the Ankro, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, we met up in I think it was the Beach Lawn Hotel, and I'll tell you, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I thrashed out some hell of a deal for the Ankro Championship. It cost me an absolute fortune. You'd have been so proud.
Yeah. I was always quite happy to pay, but I could never afford Kenny's rates. Like, even if I was good enough, there's no chance I could have done that. I was too busy handballing 50-kilo bags of coal to get enough to do navigations without paying the McKinstry, what would you call it? Bonus on it. Yeah.
Day rate.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
Well, he did sell the Porsche gig as a works drive to me, to be fair. So he went down high.
You just, Kevin, we're going to let you go if that's okay, and we'll focus on, because we've only literally just got the Red Mark II done now. We've a lot more to crack on with here. So thanks very much for coming on. All the best. We'll catch up soon.
Cheers, guys.
Good to see you.
Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers, guys.
There you go. A bit of a surprise for you, Ken.
That was definitely a surprise, man.
Yeah.
Definitely was. Very good.
Okay, cool. Right, let's have a quick look in and see what else people are saying here. Where have we got to? Robert Lawson, remember the night Willie Hunter and Jackson Allen were second overall to him driving a Ford Granada automatic and a passenger in the back seat? I remember this.
I remember it too. Absolutely. Those were the good old days.
That was quite incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Granada Gate.
Willie Hunter's girlfriend, wasn't it, at the time?
A Granada Gate it was as well, I remember.
Yeah.
Big fan, early 90s as well. Skill behind the wheel. Always found Kenny one of the most approachable. Yeah, this seems to be a common theme, the messages that I've had as well. You're going to have to be a bit more grumpy going forward, Kenny. You have less happen.
He's trying his best.
There you go.
Yeah.
Somebody else was in Sweden in 2018 with you. There is probably a wee Bacardi in that Coke, I'd imagine. What else we got here? Robbie is only concerned the pound coin finds way under the throttle. Okay.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody understood the rationale for looking for the pound.
Good man. Favourite Cork 20 stage, Kenny? Any spring to mind?
Mulliganish, the one Robbie and I had a massive accident on, or Fury. Those are two fantastic stages.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant stages. And look, most of the stages around that part of the world are fantastic, man. Great country to rally in.
Was that the accident? Was that the accident, Kenny?
Say again,
a girl and a fella, and they give us a lift from the end of the stage. Was that the stage? Was that the? We had a fairly big accident now, and we're still just recovering from the shock of the whole thing. But we got to the end of the stage anyway. We got a lift down to the end.
Did you have to put Kenny in your back or anything? No.
No. I couldn't have carried him half a mile. Let me tell you. But when we got to the end of the stage, there was a girl and a fella said that they would give us a lift down to where Sam and that was down at the end of a road.
Down the side where it was in.
That's exactly where it was, down to the pub there.
Yeah.
She took off in that car. Like, it was unbelievable. We were going faster than I ever wanted to go in a road car. I put my helmet and everything back on in the back of this yoke because I could see the accident coming. Fair enough. Down the side of a yoke, tore the side out of it too. So another two accidents in the one day. That's like a day that you spend with Phil Collins. You never had one accident. You always had two. And that was only Rocking.
Mad. Right, who else have we got here? It's just literally hundreds. We could be here all night just going through some of these. Where have we got the... Look at this one. Since I was a child, in car with Kenny and Robbie in the Caliber Sierra in the rain has always stuck with me. Kenny hit water, got sideways, and Robbie said, "Steady boy." You probably don't remember that one, do you?
No, I can remember if it's the big slide. We were leading that rally, and which rally was it, Cork or something? It was anyway. But I remember we had one almighty broadside in the car in it, and I think you had the instruction at the start of the stage, Kenny, that was one that we wanted to light up. We felt good about it after when we'd done the recce, and we wanted to go quick. And we got a big slide on in the rain in that car. But you didn't have to say too much. You know, I see some people on in-car things, and there's a lot of conversation going on. But outside of the notes, there would be very rarely any other words spoken on the stage.
Yeah, very, very little was ever said. And yes, there was the odd time. But obviously, if you were saying "steady boy" to me, it had been a biggie, like, you know.
That would have been the 3-door Cosy probably in Cork 20, the year you went on to win the title.
Could well
I think it probably was.
Yeah. Okay. Robbie McGurk's having a watch in as well. Robbie's here most weeks. And somebody highlighting the fact that one of your previous drivers, Robbie, used to co-drive Joshua Semple, didn't you?
Joshua was some driver, you know. When I think back over the drivers that I've sat with over the years, if I think about just absolute natural talent, you know, Joshua Semple's ability to make a car do something on a stage was incredible. And we had the wee Talbot Sambas in those days, and we're doing the British Championship against Harry Hockley, I think it was, in the Novas.
Yep.
And you remember those, Pete, with Joshua and those, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah,
you did.
A story, Trevor, about Joshua Semple, just whenever his name came up there. Many years ago, who knows when, Bill Adair was co-driving for me. I think he maybe done most of the Northern Ireland Championship or whatever.
Yeah.
He was sitting with me, and I think we were doing a gavel stage in Enniskillen, and we were sitting on the start line. And again, there's no notes or anything like that. So Bill, he's sitting BDA, you know, horse sitting ready to go. And Bill, he says to me, he says, "Ken," he just calls me Ken. "Ken, you see that first right-hand corner? That's absolutely flat out." And I says, "But are you sure it's flat out?" "Absolutely flat out, Ken, there's no problem. I've been around a whole lot of times." So that was fine. I arrived down into this first right-hand corner in fifth gear, and we're in the bushes, and we're flying out over the top of Bill Adair's head. I got to the end of the stage, and we didn't hit anything, but I got to the end of the stage, and I says to Bill, "I thought you said that right-hander was flat out." "Aye," he says, "it was in Joshua Semple's wee Samba." That was Bill's theory, you know. Probably 30 mile an hour slower, you know.
Incredible. So somebody else is having a wee look in.
Oh, Caroline McGaffin and Susie watching the wee road.
Oh, that.
Wow, that's her. That's her.
Yeah.
She hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed. No.
Not one bit. And if you look closely here, you can see her name on the front of this. This is before Emma was there, Maggie and Susie. Look.
That's right. That is right. Wow.
See, always thinking of the family, yeah?
Some crack.
Yeah. Right, and they've got a wee robe as well. What's a wee robe? I think
that's a wee Robbie.
A wee robe, yeah.
A wee robe, okay, that's it. Who else is here? Sean Tracy's here. Also Simon Welby. And of course Ken. Ken as well.
Yeah. That, you see, Ken Welby was heavily involved in the Caliber days. If you remember, Robbie, like, sure, he was at every rally with us, like, and him and Maggie would have travelled about in the car, and they're doing gravel, or they're doing mud, or they're doing weather, or they're doing something, you know. So thanks to all those guys.
Ken was always Mr. Sensible in the team, you know. So you knew you could depend on them. Amongst that whole bunch, there was
reliable. Reliable is the word you need for Ken, isn't it, Mr. Reliable?
If you wanted to get home, or you knew that there was going to be a bit of an issue, you needed to have a quiet word with Ken Welby, and Ken made sure you got home and got to the right bed or into the right hotel or whatever at the end of the day.
Just a bit of clarification there from Susan. It's wine, so we know that's good.
Robbie, you're talking about getting into the right bed. Do you remember a night in Donegal, in the hills of Donegal? And what had happened was somebody had come in late looking a room. So Robbie was booked into this room, and it was a double bed in it. But these people come in, and basically Maggie or myself or Louise or some of them had said, well, sure, why don't they take that room and put Robbie into a different room? So, but nobody ever told Robbie. So 2 or 3 in the morning, Robbie, he jumps into bed. Later on, he sort of thinks somebody's maybe in beside him. So he wakens up the next morning, and there's a girl on one side and a fella on the other.
Uh-huh.
And the fella looks over at her and says, "Who's he?" Wasn't that the gist of the story, Robbie?
That's it. I kept my eyes shut and kept my hands up around the top of my head there in case there'd be a punch thrown or something on it. And then he says to her, slip out quietly and don't wake him. And that was great. That was great. They slipped on down. I stayed where I was for a while before I went down for the breakfast.
Mad, absolutely mad.
Mad. Right, let's get through these then. Brilliant memories they are. A great way to spend your birthday. Hi, Derek. I hope all is well with you. What car is K7 Cal or H7 Cal on now? You wouldn't have that number plate anymore, do you?
No, I don't have. That went away. Ray Brammer actually bought that car in England.
Right.
So he may still have it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Orr saying another Friday night's entertainment, give my brother a hard time. That's bad, isn't it? That man lying in a sick bed and he's giving you a hard time. How is your brother, Noel, after? Just want to explain what happened to him. It's for those people who don't know, and how he is, more importantly.
He was doing a rally or one of the cross-country World Cups in Saudi last weekend, and he was with Yazid Al-Raji in their Toyota Hilux, which is one hell of a beast. And unfortunately, they misjudged a dune, and Michael described it. He said they dropped about the height of a house and ended up in their roof, nose and then the roof. And Yazid was taken away in a helicopter. Michael had to bounce around. It sounds a bit like your story in the back of an ambulance, except this was across the sand dunes, and. But the bottom line was he broke his C1 vertebrae, and so he spent a few nights in hospital, and he got home beginning the middle of the week there, and he's now on a collar for 6 weeks. But yes, he needs the collar. I was speaking to him today, so he can't take it off for too long before the old weight of the head starts to bear a bit too much. So
yeah,
6 weeks, I think 6 to 8 weeks, they'll be back at it again.
Yeah, it's just the momentum of those things when they do go wrong, like the weight transfer and everything. It's just incredible.
It's a completely different game. It's unbelievable. Just everything's so precise that what we've been doing, it's just like it's distance corner. Well, this is just follow your nose for 20 miles and just keep an eye out for this and that. I mean, it's just completely madness.
And I saw the in-car of it. It all looked very innocuous at the start of it. And then you can see, it just seemed to be got into a lot of bull dust and got bogged. And that's what tripped it up. But mad. The fuel tank in that machine, Kenny, how big's the fuel tank in it?
And which car now?
And this Toyota Land Cruiser, Michael does all these.
I wouldn't have a clue, but I would imagine it's maybe 150, 200 litres, was it?
Try 3 times that, 500 litres for the fuel tank in it. Now, if you go into the desert, strap yourself into that, and out you go in the desert, do an average of about 95 mile an hour through sand dunes.
You're definitely in the camp of never, Trevor, aren't you?
Very much so. We've had this conversation with Michael.
I wonder, is it diesel or petrol?
It's petrol. It's a big. It's like a world rally car, Kenny. It's nuts, and about 2.2 ton or whatever. you need to speak to Michael about it. I did a podcast for him recently, and he was telling me about it, and we had a conversation a year ago, and fair play, but the same boy will be back in it as soon as he gets mended. He'll be back. He absolutely loves it. The challenge of the navigation, Robbie, is just phenomenal. It's worth having a listen to it just to see what they're like. And
their ambition is very clear with Dakar anyway, so that's where they're trying to work towards to get the win in that one.
Okay, it's wet and windly and Tip. Any stories from Catalonia the time you went over?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Robbie will tell you the first story whenever we went.
That must have been some crack going to that in the Subaru Legacy, though.
Well, it was, but the first hotel that we booked into, Guinness had booked us into that. You remember, Robbie? I mean,
I remember a lot about that.
It was an absolute dive. I says to Robbie, if we're doing this rally, I am not staying in this hotel. It was that bad. And we have been all around Ireland, everywhere, all over the world, and nothing like that at all. But to be fair, they got us another hotel, Robbie, and it was 100%, wasn't it? We had it very much to ourselves.
It was, and they would also promised us a recce car. And although we had recce'd in a lot of different cars over the years and could put up with most things, they had, was it like a wee Suzuki Jeep or something was the first thing they come up with, which wouldn't have been great to help us with the lines in it. And then there's something else that they give us at the end of the day, and we got stopped by the Spanish police for something.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have the right documentation for being in the car at all, and we ended up then having to call somebody in Guinness to come and try and sort the issue out so we could go on with the recceing. And then
we got arrested, didn't we?
We did get arrested. Well, it wasn't the first time, so we had an idea what to do next, which was look the phone or look for a sponsor or a lawyer.
Yeah. One of the stages in Catalonia was 35 kilometers long and a 45-kilometer road sector.
Yeah.
For to get back around to the start of the stage, because you weren't allowed to come back up the stage. So 85, 90 kilometers for to do one loop. Now that turbo Legacy that we had, we were probably another 50, 60 Ks from a petrol station. So I think we could do 2 runs over the stage and had to go for petrol. It was the most horrible recce we ever done, Robbie, wasn't it?
It was definitely a tough one. It was a long recce, and the other thing was Kenny was determined that whatever food we were going to eat, he would be able to identify what had come off. And my Spanish would have been non-existent in those days. And you're away out in the Spanish countryside, and you'd stop in at lunchtime to try to get something to eat, and he'd say, "Now, Pete, what is that exactly?" And I had no idea. He just kind of made it up, and I would then have to explain to the people, as long as you burn it, because he likes stuff well done, as long as you burn it good, it'll be fine. There'll be no questions asked here. So get her well done.
It's not the one that really the notes were just all versions of hairpins, basically.
That was the most difficult thing that I found was whenever we were making the notes, it wasn't like a straight and then a corner of some degree or other. So basically most of it was a lot of hairpins joining each other from left to right and different severity and longer. And it really, really was difficult. But I think if my memory serves me right, Robbie, we were 8th fastest overall on the first stage out of the Mar. On the second stage, I think we ended up 6th fastest overall.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, into the third stage, which really started to work for us because it was a faster stage. And if you can remember, there was a wee wire that pulled out of one of the plugs in the ECU.
That's right, yep.
Took us out of the rally.
We couldn't figure out what it was, but we thought it was fuel surge because she would cut out and then come back on par again. And it was only after she finally stopped that we started looking at it and what wasn't working, and found that the plug into the back of the ECU wasn't making a full connection. And when we were cornering, sometimes it was connecting, sometimes it wasn't. Once we plugged it back in again, she was good to go.
Yep. Horrible when those things happen. The same happened to us in the Astor and the Scottish Rally. An airplane connector came apart. We were leading the rally by 40 seconds or something over a jump. That was it, 15 minutes to find it. And fair play to Neil Weird, and he got behind the dash and found it. But horrible when those things go on. Right, what else we got here? If you ever event outside of Ireland, memorably has runs on the Manx National. Thanks, Martin. Martin sent a photograph, which we'll get to later, hopefully, as well. I'll have a look for that now. Manx, you've plenty of good runs in the Manx, the national or international. You love it over there, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, those some of the best times, some of the best stage times that we had were certainly in the Manx. Our notes were so good. National. I think we won the national rally. You done the national, Robbie, with me. I think you had wins there, and Noel, you had wins with me as well.
I won it 5 times. Ian.
How many?
5.
Oh, you
really? Wow.
Yeah. You mightn't have had any wins with me then, Robbie, in the national, had you?
I won the Manx National with Phil Collins.
You did.
Was where I won that. But that's one of the rallies, I guess, along with the circuit, that sort of stands out in my mind that we could have won or should have won on a couple of occasions. You know, we were so unlucky up against Richard Burns that year when we broke a drive shaft with 2 or 3 stages remaining on it. But the Manx really was like our world championship rally in those days. You know, going overseas to the Isle of Man felt like going to a WRC event. But all brilliant crack on the recce and stuff as well. We discovered the pleasures of self-catering. After we run out of hotels that would let us stay in them, we went self-catering to Grudel Glen.
Yes, I've been there. It's great.
And we'd had Bertie and Rory would have come down for the breakfast the odd time. And it was fairly crude, but anyway, it was grand.
I think Joey used to stay there. Joey Dunlop used to stay in the Grudel Glen as well, and he's over for the bikes at times.
Very handy, and there's a wee restaurant just up the road from it. We used to eat in there all the time, and it was a cheap way of going to the Isle of Man, and basically you don't leave so that we could do the recce and do the rally, and all the boys were. I think we maybe had 2 of those wee cottages at a time, Robbie.
That's right, yeah.
All the boys would stay in there.
But we used to have the competition then when you come home to see if you could call the stage without having the notes in front of you. If you could remember every bend and the length of every straight on it. So you would start, maybe it was a 20 kilometer, 30 kilometer stage, and you had to try to be word perfect on the whole thing. So I tell you,
off you go then, faulty well, off you go, uphill.
My memory wouldn't do it now, Trevor. But it was amazing, if you hadn't had the notes, just the level of detail that we had, or the bumps in the road or anything like that. And you could have nearly nominated it to a wee brick on the side of the wall with the level of detail we had. And we did it at night, sometimes in the fog with no lights.
Everybody with that detail, Robbie, hadn't they?
Aye.
Anybody?
I still remember now.
Rally really came over the years.
I had boxes and boxes and boxes of notes now for the Isle of Man, and you could complete your recce at home. And you literally could compile the international rally in your kitchen table, and I would say to you, you would arrive at the stage start, and you'd say we've all but half a mile between junctions such and such and such and such, and that's all we have to make, and you're off. You leave a couple of blank pages, fill it in, and away you go.
That's right.
No, it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Although you talk about the away match to the Isle of Man, do you remember Kenny Hugh, the pilot?
Yes.
How we
Airport.
Bartyfield Airport. It was we discovered this quick way so we could get back and forth to the island, and because save the hassle of getting on the ferry. So we found this wee man. He was a farmer in Coleraine, wasn't he, Kenny? He said Coleraine on a farm in the Isle of Man, but he flew between the two of them. So he would drop into Ards airfield and pick us up and bring us over and land on this field. It was just at the bottom of the Baldwins, wasn't it?
Bottom of the Baldwins, behind the grandstand, really, the opposite side of the grandstand.
But you would come in and you're going, where are we landing, Hugh? And it's over there, and it was just a field in the middle of nowhere. But if I remember, there was about a strip of tarmac about 30 feet long, and that's where he did the braking. It was brilliant. And you remember, it was one morning we were heading over, I can't remember, it was international or national, and there was a bit of traffic. You were coming from Cumberside to get the Ards, and I think Emma was in the passenger seat to bring the car back. And Hugh, we're on the phone. Where are you? Oh, I'm stuck in traffic. And Hugh just says, tell him, don't bother, I'll come and pick him up. So we got in the plane, Hugh and I, and we taxied over to the gate. You know where the helicopters are there at the Ards airfield? Yeah. Kenny and Emma just pulls up. He throws the bag over the fence, walks onto the plane, and it's the quickest departure you've ever seen in your life. It must have been 30 seconds from driving the car to being in the air. It was fantastic. That was huge.
In the early days when we went over, the rental car companies, the hire car companies wouldn't give you a car because they knew what the crack was going to be. So the first thing you had to do when you got there was to buy an idle car for the 2 weeks or the 3 weeks of the recce that you were going to be there. And then it would have done as a chase car too on the event. And then when the event was over, you went to the airport to get the flight home, and you just left the car sitting in the car park in the at the airport. There must have been towing recce cars out of that for 5 years after us being there.
If you can remember, that last car that we got was an Allegro.
That's right. And recce and an Allegro.
Yeah, and we ended up at the prize giving that year, giving the Allegro to another guy, a young guy who basically hadn't won any trophies. And if you can remember, we give him our trophies as well, or the perpetual one, because he hadn't won any trophies. And I don't know how he got involved, but so he ended up with our trophies and an Allegro, which he later gave to Bobby Willis, I think, to drive to the airport. Obviously, Bobby didn't pay for the car parking fees.
That's mad.
I saw earlier there that John Skinner was on, so it's good to say hello to John.
Yeah, you forgot about that, boys, didn't you?
I forgot about that. Sorry,
that's John Skinner, the ex-mayor of Douglas as well, yeah? So,
yes, John was great. John was brilliant. Terrific clerk of the course, and really was very good, I have to say, very accommodating, and did everything he could to get everybody to go to the island. Same with the international, Richard Bardry in his time. It was, they were absolutely top quality events and really brilliant roads. Although I think as the years went on now, the roads were getting shinier and shinier. They're getting bluer and bluer when they get wet now. It wasn't quite as much fun just in the wet as it was whenever we first went, but
very slippery.
But it's still probably, Robbie, you say about one you should have won, and that was, I had the same experience with him back in the 2000s, just in the international, and it was, we were catching Eugene going into the last few stages, and Eugene had a wee turbo problem, I think, did he, Kenny? There was some problem. Anyway, we were catching him well, and down round, wasn't Braid, somewhere around there, it was round the duck pond, just after the duck pond, and we had the most almighty spin I've ever had in my life between the banks, the width of the car, and Mark Higgins was behind us. And at the end of the stage, he just thought, how did you survive that? But we ended up losing the event by 20 seconds or something. And that was still, if you have a regret, that was a regret, not winning the International.
Got you. Okay. But you talked about the hotel. Sean's asking a question here, and it's probably a story that you can't tell.
Well, there was one year, and it was a hotel, and I'll not say the name of it, but anyway,
You do. Probably best.
Villadare was there at the time. Mark Crowe was there. He was co-driving at the time. He was the complete devil among the whole lot.
There'd have been no crack with that man, like.
No, Davy Greer, all that gang were there. So there was who was it? Stevie Janet, a boy called John McCracken, Davy Greer, and what do you call them? They were all into sneaking into your room and basically coping the bed on her side while you were sleeping.
Yep.
So Villadare, he got wasted. His door was immediately on his right hand side in the wee single bedroom. So he lay all night with a red fire extinguisher and the nozzle of it pointing out over his shoulder. Anybody opened the door, what do you call it? Stevie Janet really couldn't get him because he got into bed first of all. So during the day, the boys sneaked in, took basically all the slots out of the bed, right? And Stevie was probably, 15 or 16 stone. Of course, he jumps onto the bed, straight down through the mattress onto the top of John. The racking and tearing about through those hotels in those times, and all good crack, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Nothing malicious.
And Davy Greer. Davy in the middle of it as well. Him and Crowe, the builder.
One as bad as the other, like.
Well, the one that Sean's talking about there was, again, we'll not mention the hotel. It was down in Killarney, but I can't remember what I had done, but I was trying to sneak off to bed anyway. But the boys, when I was going up in the elevator, Sean...
It's called the lift, Robbie.
Oh, lift, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
When I was getting up in the lift anyway, the boys were waiting, the doors opened, and they just emptied a fire extinguisher into the lift shaft with me. And you would think that you could find the door to get out in a lift. Like there's only a small area to cover on it, but I could not even find the door. I couldn't breathe was the first problem, but the second thing, I couldn't find which wall the door was on to get back out again. And all I could hear was Michael Hearn laughing through the fog in the place. But yes, that's what Sean was at. Thanks, Sean, for the reminder.
Yeah, one of the best stories is Ronan McNamee tells the story of co-driving Penty Auricola. I'm sure you've heard this one before. They're staying in Europa, but he convinced Penty that he had to sleep in under the bed. So he had to get the mattress off the bed and get the bed on top of him to sleep because he was in Belfast his first time. It was during the Trouble. Like,
yeah.
Penty did it. And of course they come in and they wouldn't let him do it all night, clearly, but they got him up, he went up and did it, and then they got the porter to let him into the room and seen him do it. Right. Hi, Johnny. Good to have you here all the way from Market Hill. What a great place to live. Remember watching Kenny many years. So this is it. You're talking about Spain and the legacy, but think of all the sprints and hill climbs and quarries that you did and escorts before even Rallycross. Like the number of events that you've done is just ridiculous. Like,
even down to the Rallycross days, like it was mad. Sidney Meek, you remember Sidney Meek built me a G3?
Yeah, I have a question about that again, John McElroy, just before we go on, before I forget to ask it. So that's the one you used at Lurgan Park for the first time, the G3 Escort, yeah? And that's the one with the photograph earlier.
That's right. Basically, Sidney built that car for me, and the whole thing was Robbie McGurk was involved in it, Ian Cuddy, what do you call the other guy, the Toyota man? They were all involved in
Norman Burns.
Burns, yeah, and another lad. The name slips me, but
Gary Wilson, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, basically had a radiator in the back, BDG engine up front, and we just got it finished. Well, what we thought was finished on the Friday night, and I started to drive it home, and Lurgan Park was on the next day.
Yeah.
Of course, it started to overheat, and it blew the head gasket because it wasn't getting enough air through the big tunnel that was made in the back of it.
Yeah.
So whenever I got home, I rang Sid. I says, Sid, you'll never believe this thing has, she was overheating on home, and she's done the head gasket. And he says, well, what do you want to do? I well, I don't know, what can we do? Well, he says, look, can you get the head gasket bit of it sorted out? And I says, well, look, we'll have a go at sorting it out. I don't think there should be a problem. I have a gasket and all here. We can lift the head off it in the morning. Well, he says, what we'll do is I'll gather up the boys. Sam, I got Sam on board, Sean on board, Paul, as we call him, my nephew. Yeah. So, yeah, they were all going to meet us at 5 o'clock in the morning. So Maggie, she was up making breakfast for everybody and whatever. But Sydney, he arrived at 5 o'clock with his clan anyway. And of course, the first thing he says to me was good morning. The second thing he says, you have a dog box out there? And I says, I have. He says, I think there's a boy sleeping in it. And I says, he says, well, there's 2 feet sticking out of it anyway. So it transpired that bloke, he just come out of the pub whenever we heard that we were in trouble. And he couldn't get in, he didn't want to waken us. So he got into the dog box along with the dog. He slept with the Labrador all night. Waking him up the next morning. So we done the head gasket. Sydney done the what do you call it? The radiator, put it all up in the front. If you look at that G3, Sydney near fell out with me. If you have a photograph of the front of her, no, it's not there. Yeah. And what happened was in the bumper, there was a whole pile of holes across the front of the bumper. And of course, I drilled one of them out of, it wasn't level. And he didn't like that. I sure he didn't.
Perfectionist, you see.
Oh, the perfectionist, yeah. And
that wasn't even Sydney Motorsport then. That was the Bush Performance Centre still probably out of thought.
Yeah. And of course, we won the event, you know.
So the question for John was it you that asked Sid to build it, or was Sid building it and you commissioned? So did you ask him to do it, or did you buy it off him after he built it?
No. I asked Sid to build it, but what I wanted was for Rallycross, basically if you had a Mark II Escort in those days, really the problem that you had was you didn't have enough bump travel. So that's whenever the car sits at ride height, you didn't have enough travel down the way, as you know, on compression. And I said to Sid, look, basically make it all the same geometry and whatever of a Mark II, but give me an extra 2 inches of travel. So that means lifting turrets on the inside and all that sort of stuff. But Sydney done and made it just an absolute superb job of the car. Like that car actually, whenever it was sold, like I won the Bushwhacker in it, in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive, I think I'm right in saying. Because there's a few boys complaining that I took a 4-wheel drive car to the Bushwhacker. And
that
so
McGurk boy would have been having a moan at you with that.
Well, Robbie wasn't the biggest complainer, that's for sure. But it was all still in good jest. But what I done was we took the car back the following year in 2-wheel drive. And it just worked every bit as well. Fantastic. It actually ended up in Norway or Sweden. So it did. Yeah, there's Maggie has found a picture of the car.
Maggie, come you in here, do we get a look at you? Maggie,
I don't know how you can see that or not. One of the holes.
Sit.
You can see it. You see it?
Yeah. Fantastic.
So that was Kenny's mess.
You just ruined the whole machine, you did.
Ruined the whole machine.
Agricultural, you are.
Yeah. But she ended up a Rallycross car, I think, in Norway.
Okay. So the ability to be 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, to answer John's question, then that was it.
Yeah. 2-wheel drive.
There she is now. This is the boss. This is the real boss.
Hello, Maggie.
How are you doing?
I'm just going to the loo for a second.
That's good to know. Sit you down there, Maggie, for a bit of crack.
I'll sit down.
You're looking younger every day I see you. What's the secret?
It'll cost you money.
Me and you have had a fair few nights in Sligo and places like that as well, Maggie, haven't
Yeah.
There's a few sessions were involved and
things that you probably would. I would probably not want to remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with Bertie Law.
Yeah, Bertie and Davy Atchison, a few of those boys that have been on the
Those
scene
boys, exactly,
in those
yeah.
days. Yeah. So we were just talking earlier about this man and how you've ended up sticking with him and all the crack and everything goes with it. And I was saying that as long as Maggie had a decent car on a holiday to go and see her sister in Canada once every so often, you were happy enough.
We're very happy, yeah. Definitely so.
But they kept you busy all the time, didn't they? In
I'm
the
sure
team?
they always keep you busy. It's great crack whenever you're busy. It's awful whenever you're running around with your two hands in one life and you've nothing to do. You know,
Right.
whenever you're doing something like graveling, you're doing something with with chaser, you're involved in the rallying. That's the great side of it. You know, if you're sitting at home and you're not involved, you don't know what's going on and days are long. But whenever you're involved in it, it's really good and I enjoy it. It's
And
great.
is there any truth in the rumour that one day Kenny was leaving the workshop and you said to him that you're not going to the same house tonight, you're going to a different house because you'd gone and bought a house and never really told him until you were actually walking him into it. Is there any truth in that rumour?
Kenny told me later on, it was like Johnny Cash, I moved into that house one piece at a time. Didn't tell anybody about it, just went and did it, and that was it. Great job.
Yeah, mad.
If we hadn't have done anything at all, we would have been still sitting in White Road 20 years later.
I know. See, some crack. And I didn't even know it, you'd moved. So that's how long ago it is from Ivan, Ballydown Road. So, yeah, it's
You
all
have to
changed.
come and visit me.
We definitely will. When things lighten up and we see the light at the end of that tunnel, we'll need to go and have a wee bevy or two. Yeah, definitely.
That's it.
That'd be
Good
good.
to see you, Maggie.
See you too.
Thank you.
Right, that's you sorted out, Kenny. Now. And somebody, Mo Bell's having a watch in. Look,
Oh, fair play to Morris. How you keeping, Morris?
yeah,
That's my local undertaker.
he is, I know. It's good to keep in with those boys, isn't it?
Definitely, now he would weigh you up and measure you up.
There's Rory. Good to see Rory is having a watch. So that's great.
Yeah, fair play. I will.
Zach Murray's an operator. That's good to know. Should say as well, I just said to see Kenny in the HQ for Carrick and Sir Forestry when I was a child. I actually puked. There you go. Dara reckons you got that excited that you made him throw up. You're not the first person that you've had a hand in throwing up as well. What about the rubbish you used to drink in the early days? Pernod and Coke. What? Remember?
Pernod and Coke, yeah. I drunk that for years.
I know.
I don't know, muddy water I called it, but yeah, it was just something that I liked, and then it's now Bacardi, so yeah.
But it wasn't just you. Everybody, Sam was on it. The whole lot were on it, weren't they?
Well, there's a few of the boys were on it, but yeah, it was sort of an acquired taste now whenever I think back on it, I think Robbie would have handled a bit of it as well.
Right.
Along with
I would always started with a pint. You were never a pint man. You would have had a pint if you were thirsty or something like that, whereas I would have started the evening on that. You would have started on the Bacardis or the Pernos.
Annette Burke wants to know her father's Pat Burke.
Yeah, Pat was a good skin now, so he was. Bought a lot of lawnmowers from us.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not selling robots at the minute.
Why is that?
Well, I don't think sort of the farming community, and that's where we're in, sort of lends itself to robots. But probably
You surprised me.
probably we'll get there. The robot mowers they're becoming more popular, that's for sure. Yeah.
Right. Here's another one. First time you saw you, sister from Brian Byrne. 92 Circuit Ireland, I've been the Legacy, Alcavana stage, past the house in the Caliber car, where I was, rather forget it, say, what a gentleman. Okay. John McElroy is back, and Banbury's boy, don't come better than Kenny. Definitely a big why. I fell in love with rallying. And as I say, the career that man's had, he's going to do a podcast with me soon as well, because that's a fascinating story. Cheered him in the escorts. I was worried the Volvo 240 would be the end of him.
Where's that Volvo come from?
Everybody asked the same question, though.
Yeah, there was a boy. Would you believe that was? So it was a boy. Conleth had that car. He was from England, and he built that car as a 240. We needed a car that would work in Group A, and so there wasn't that many cars. I think the big Toyotas was one of them. Austin McHale was one of them, like a Monza or something like that. So we decided to go along the Volvo route, which was Group A, and it was a turbo car, but it had unreliability problems with gearbox and back axle. The guy said, "You're gonna do the Circuit of Ireland, which is a 5-day rally. You're gonna need, 5 sets of half shafts and stuff like that there." So yeah, amazing. It was quite a powerful car. So we basically put Manta gearbox in it and made the back axle like an Opel Manta as well. Just done a lot of things to it, made it fairly reliable. Like for the back shocks that always broke, we ended up putting in Group 4 Escort front dampers into the back of the car, which basically done the whole rally. But I can remember John McGaffin was sitting with me, and we were somewhere in Tyrone. We come out over it was a quarry, and we come out over this big jump. Well, the car landed. My God, there was stuff flew out of the floor of her everywhere. All up into the air. Just complete dust. It was just such a mess. But it was an unwieldy brute. Maggie was she was going to Unislim at the time, and she said the girl out of Unislim that's running.
You just check that you can tell this story now before you carry on. All right.
That wouldn't be a problem. So basically, wanted to know could she sponsor me on the Circuit of Ireland, and how much it would be looking. And I hadn't a clue what to say. So I said to Maggie, look, just find out how much she's willing to give. So she gave me 100 quid. So she got 2 wee stickers. They were actually about 4 inches long on the front of the car. And I'm going to tell you, there was more photographs taken of that Unislim on that big Volvo. And it was the only rally car that I ever sold and made money out of. And the boy Cunliffe bought it back again.
Yeah, so, you're in good company. Peter Solberg had one of them when he did a bit of rallycrossing as well, didn't he? And
that's right.
He's also a marketing genius by the sounds of it, Robbie, there.
I was just saying, I could think of no better man to advertise Unislim.
Sumo 1 to Sumo 2.
Exactly.
What's your favourite Sumo 1 to Sumo 2 story then? There must be some absolute classics.
Like this.
You can have a think about it, and we'll come back to that later on then.
Well, I'll tell you a story about what they came up with when we were having a problem on Rally of the Lakes. I think it would have been, I'm not sure which car it was, but anyway, we had a gearbox problem going in to come over the top of Mall's Gap.
That would have been 89. That would have been 89 in the Group 4 car. Group N car.
I think that's what it was, Trevor, all right. And we were setting off up Mall's Gap, but what we did was we already tied a rope on to the front of the car and wrapped it around the wing mirror. And we'd done a deal with the Monaghan boys.
Raymond and Colin.
Yes, that if we were stopped anywhere on the Gap, they were to pull in front. I'd be ready with a rope. I'd tie it on to the back of their car. And all they then needed to do was keep her flat to the end, because it was the last stage of the rally, if I'm right, Pete.
Yeah.
Right. So that was dead on. Sure enough, the gearbox gave out, and I was out. They pulled in. I got the rope tied to the back of her, and they took off. And I tell you, they were not hanging about, and us only strapped about 25 foot behind them on this rope.
Sure, rally speed.
Oh, it was flat out. But the thing was, then we got caught by I think it was French or German guy in the dark on the way down the hill.
Brunel.
Belgium. There'd been Dominic Brunel in the mountain.
You boys have a good memory of this.
And actually 1990, I think. Go on. Now you say that. Go on.
And he passed us, but didn't realise that there was a rope between us and Monaghan into one of the corners. And he pulled in, hit the rope, which then, of course, shortened the distance again. So now the three of us are nearly directly in line. You would think would have just parallel parked each other at 20 miles an hour. and then the rope had a bit of a spring to it and shot him back off out to the right-hand side. He went up the bank, and we headed off down the stage again. He never caught us again. But the deal was then, when we'd get to the finish line, between the flying finish and the time car, what we'd do was stand on the brakes, the rope would snap, and then we'd coast in as if we'd just finished the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when he stood on the brakes in the car, first of all, Monaghan's car went sideways, and there was marshals running for their lives.
That could have took somebody's head off. Like,
I could hear the whiplash of that rope going, and I could see, nobody could see in the dark what it was, but there was this whip coming out of the thing anyway, and we rolled to stop, calm as you like, got to the end of the stage and got the time card, and weren't too slow on it. One group end.
Yeah, hang on a minute, right? So you were being towed behind a rally car at full tilt then, Kenny, were you?
Oh, full time.
This is a Group A car. This is a 3-door Cosy. It was a Group A car then at the Monaghans are in, was it?
No, it was a Group N car, and Raymond Monaghan was a Group A car.
That's the mean. He was towing you. So
yeah,
you're going to,
and, and basically Robbie had to start reading notes again.
We're going that quick.
Well, I think we still finished that rally. We had been third. We were leading Group N, and we were third overall or fourth overall. And I still think we finished 6th or 8th until John Price.
Still showing 6th, but there was a bit of a protest at the end of it, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's right. John Price protested this at the end then for unfair.
I think the organisers are probably okay with your ingenuity and your creative use. They've been okay with it. That's part of the crack. Like, but.
The biggest disappointment of that, I think we were on a bonus from Ford.
2,100 pound, Robert. I'll never forget it.
Next time I can get back to Wales, I'll call for it.
Poor man's gone now. He's left us, Robbie.
All right. Sorry about that now.
Yeah,
but
that's
anyway,
all right. You wouldn't
I
know.
got a revenge on him anyway, but we'll not go into the details on how that occurred.
Yeah, so there was another story that Rory Kennedy's just texted me about time cards in Killarney. What's all that about, Robbie?
That was a good one. Yeah.
We got in, and I think it was like the last stage of the rally or something. And I remember getting out of the car and
on the road section.
And I think I put the time card on the roof of the car. Maybe it was.
It's a good place to put it. Like.
You left.
Did you Velcro it on?
I never even thought of it, But
you thought you had done that, but what had actually happened was you'd left the time card on the seat of the car.
Right.
And
okay.
The young lad had actually lifted it out.
Right.
That's what actually happened. The time card.
Right.
But we couldn't find it anyway, Tiggle.
Yeah.
We drove on down the road and to the start of the stage, and Robbie went and asked Mike Marshall. Said that we had lost our time card, and was there any possibility of the marshal writing our arrival time on a piece of paper, and the stage start time and whatever. And we sent the boys then with the chase car back to that particular point, and I think the people out of the house had brought the time card out to them, if I remember rightly. Does that sound about right, Robbie?
I think so. I know I couldn't remember or think to myself, well, where would a time card be? It's not the sort of thing you'd want to be misplacing. No, and I was thinking, could I have put it on the roof? But, when you're in that sort of a panic, you're thinking to yourself, God, anything could have happened.
Yeah, but I think basically that's what had happened. But fair play to Mike Marshall. He accepted that, obviously they had the times from all the other stages. But we were able to get the time card back, which I think made it okay at the end. Well, it did make it okay at the end of the day. I don't know where we finished. Maybe Rory knows where we actually finished overall on that rally.
I don't know which rally it was that he's referring to. So
it was Rally of Lakes.
Yeah, I know that, but what year and what car? And
well, we were. I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. It don't matter anyway. Rory, no doubt. No.
I'd like to thank Rory, who you'd expect to actually side with a co-driver for pointing that out to everybody that I lost the time card. You would expect
I was just outing them there. Don't you worry about it. You know, that's co-drivers union. There's a big X across the name of that one.
Ask Rory there, does he remember us giving him a lift off Tim Healy Pass whenever Lindsay Bonner broke down? Do you remember that, Robert? And he jumped into the car with us, and he was all ambushed Mike Marshall's wife down in Castletown Bear.
Noreen.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
That one draws a blank. That one draws a blank. But
That draws a blank, doesn't it?
Not too many. Noel, are you okay there? Just all this crack going on. Have you had any handlings with time cards over the years? Are you quite sensible when it comes to that?
The only time I remember time card kerfuffle was Sunseeker, where the stupid continental system and the route and the 2 cards away, or you're in the wrong time and you're not used to it until
If
you
you're
go.
first on the road, especially, it'd be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah. No, thankfully I had never lost them. I generally would sit on them, or if they're A4, I put them inside my notes. But if they were the short ones, I always put them under my arse, because I was always told, if you lose your time card, that's it. You're right. So unless you're persuasive like Robbie.
Yeah, clearly.
or panicking.
But
Yeah.
but I was saying earlier, Kenny was the British national champion in 1999, but you won it twice.
I did, yes. Thanks very much for that, Trevor. Yes, give me the plaudits that I deserve. Yes, 99 and 2002, I was the British national champion. Thank you.
Yeah. And why was that then?
Well, 2002, Kenny, we're talking about Maggie on her holidays.
Yeah.
Kenny decided to go for a holiday in the middle of the season. So I think you went to America or Canada or something, and you missed the park systems, the one based up in Ayr.
Yeah.
So you very kindly said, why don't you sit with the customer of mine who's doing it? So, all right, okay, here we go. And it was Stephen Harron.
Yeah.
So, Johnny used to call him the Clown Prince. So the Clown Prince of Fermanagh. So
this is Skip Harman, was it, Stephen?
That's him.
Yeah,
So,
very, very quick driver too, man.
Oh, well, Sean McElhern will remember this. I'd never met Steve. The first time I met Stephen was when we're sitting in the queue to get on the ferry to go to do the rally. And I jumped in the passenger seat, we shook hands, and we had a bit of crack, bit of chat. Anyway, before the stage started, Sean says, right, Noel, when you get to the first junction, just say to Stephen, is that all you've got? Right? All right, okay. Well, you see the first corner I said, the last thing I'm going to say to this flipping idiot is this all you've got? So, because it was the fill of the road, it was complete. Now, he was absolutely class driving, and they put a long story short, we won that event, which is why I managed to win the championship. But so Sean set me up, and at the end of that stage, I said to Stephen, after we're fastest by a bit, I think. Anyway, I says, you'll never guess what Sean Harron said to me. He says, first junction, I was meant to give you a bit of stick for going too slow. And he says, right, okay. He says, wait till we get into service. So, of course, driving to service, and he jumps out of the car and he slams the door, walks off to Sean and says, you'll never guess what that fella said to me at the first junction. You know what he said to me? And you can see Sean just laughing. Anyway, the joke was on Sean in the end, thankfully. But I'll tell you what, that was 2002. Stephen, and by the way, Stephen Harron, what a driver. Proper national, natural talent, absolutely class driver to be with, and terrific fun.
Uh-huh.
He could drive, he could reverse a trailer as fast as he could drive forward. I've never seen anything like it in my life. We broke the gearbox on a test the next year in the world car, in the two-door car, and he reversed it. We put it through scrutineering on the trailer. And he had reversed up this country lane, and I must have been doing 40 miles an hour, and I'm in the box trailer. Never seen anything like it.
Brilliant.
That was 2002, yes. And Kenny,
double British national champion Noel Orr. Well done.
Yes,
So,
don't get
Rob,
very often these days.
Robbie Philpott lost a time car. Did you ever lose anything on the way to a rally, Kenny?
Oh, no idea. God only knows. Yeah.
It's from Bobby Willis. Bobby Willis has sent me this message now.
Well, I'll just tell you that story. I was going to tell it to you later on, like, but yeah, we were going to Norway, and we were running Andrew Nesbitt in Sweden.
Oh, I've heard this story. Nesbitt told it once. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. And we were all heading down through Norway. So Johnny Bold, who worked for us for quite a while, an ex-pro drive guy, him and Sam, they were in the truck. And basically, they were heading out over the mountain. I'm not just sure all the roads, but they were heading to Gilo. And Gilo was like massive up and down hills and dales at night in the snow. But whenever they come down into the roundabout in Gilo, Johnny looked in the mirror and there was no rally car on the back of the truck. And he says to Sam, there's no trailer in the back of the truck. And Sam says, your blind shirts are white, you can't see it. I'm telling you, there's no rally car, no trailer, no nothing on the rally car. So long story short, basically,
what would you think, like, you're in that moment, what would you be thinking at that time? Like, if you...
Well, Johnny Bold probably wasn't the better of that the whole weekend.
Not surprised.
Then they decided, should they go and look for the thing? Or where would they look? Because they don't know when it's not.
Or am I going to go to jail for the rest of my life if I find it?
Yeah. So I'm driving up the road with Andrew Nesbitt. I'm driving, and of course Andrew's sitting in the passenger seat beside me, and a couple of the other guys, co-driver James O'Brien, and whatever, they're sitting in the back of the people carrier. And Sam, he makes the phone call and he says, "We've got a problem." And he says, trying not to say too much, what's wrong? We've lost the rally car. I says, what do you mean? We got into Gilo and there was no rally car or trailer, so we don't know where it is. And so I couldn't say too much because Nez was sitting beside me.
Uh-huh.
You know? So I says, okay, sure, basically, have a look for it and let me know how it's going. So that was the end of the phone call, man. I was driving down the road the next 10 minutes, like, unbelievable thing. What do I tell this man? And I didn't know what to tell him, but I thought I definitely had to tell him. And I said to him, you'll never believe, but whenever the boys got to Gilo, the rally car and trailer wasn't on the back of the truck. And fair play to Andrew, he says, well, there's not much we can do about it other than have a look for her. Let's hope she's all right. The long story short again, basically the boys found the rally car and got her. She was about 15, 16 miles back out of Gilo. And they got a snowplow stop and pulled the car out of the trailer first of all, and then pulled the trailer out. And the only thing that was bent on her was one of the trailing links where they put the rope around the trailing links in the back of the car to pull it out of the trailer. But Johnny Bold was sick. You know, he absolutely, he couldn't believe what had happened, like, you know. And
incredible.
Yeah. Another wee story, Sean McElhern will remember this very easily. Rallycross car, we were coming home from Mandela. Rallycross car, and we just come in, you know, the turn off for Ballydown.
Yes.
And I looked in the mirror again, and of course, yeah, trailer was there, no rally car on. What the hell? So turned the yoke around, and half a mile down the road there was a rally car sitting in the middle of the road.
The dual carriageway.
It wasn't a dual carriageway. It was just the old
single carriage
one at that stage. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
But, you know, we laugh about it now, but boy, was it serious.
Oh, yeah. Oh, heart in the mouth stuff, that.
It wasn't the straps, you know, the out cars were tied on the ropes and all that sort of stuff. But
mad. I've got a technical question for you from Matty O'Brada. Matty wants to know what a legacy burn do as El Masi.
Right. a bit of reverse engineering would need.
Reverse engineering, I love that term. I use it a lot. Rob and Sheila McDonald are watching and having a look at all these stories that you've had. So what happened to the automatic flywheel in the car in Killarney? Rob's wondering.
Yeah. Well, you see, there was a whole argument about that, whether we were legal with an aluminium flywheel.
What car are we talking about?
Group A Legacy.
Yeah.
Group A Impreza. And if you had an aluminium flywheel on it, you had to have the wee pedals on the steering wheel, and you had to have a tank in the back of the car, which was an air tank. So it was homologated, but only one. If you fitted one part of it, you needed all the parts fitted. But we got around that problem okay. Like, we made up our own flippers and we made a wee tank. Mind you, it wouldn't have held much air, but we got those all fitted into the back. Somebody had basically cottoned onto us in the homologation papers. And we do know who the competition was at that time.
We best leave it there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, chaps, we're 2.5 hours in.
Holy God.
Or is that time gone? It's gone quick, isn't it? So your top stories then, anything that you want to tell that you haven't told so far, Noel?
Probably the one I'd like to say is how we won the first championship in '99. I think that's a story that's worth telling. We had a good start in the Ankro. We were third in Sunseeker, second in the Granite City, won the Manx, and then I think we had another win. Anyway, we're heading in, and Marcus Dodd was obviously the main rival, and the last round was up in Kielder, Centurion, I think it was called. And so it was all nip and tuck between us and Marcus. It was all down to how this event finished. But Kielder being Kielder, the bogies were a bit of an issue. And we got into first service, and the bogies had been broken a couple of times. And we're standing in the queue to go in. Now, by the way, at the end of the last stage of the first loop, old P136XBW it was a absolutely fantastic piece of kit. This is the first time it started to let us down. It was smoking a bit, and Kenny was saying he's not sure how it's going to go. So we get into service, and we're contemplating retirement because it's not looking great. And we're standing in the queue to get in, and you're asking Marcus for his times and stuff, and Marcus is standing there saying, well, I backed off in there because I knew he was breaking the bogie. Right, okay, that's not the kind of chat we particularly like, So Kenny looks at me and just says, don't think we're going to be retiring here. So there's a bit of a line we're going to put. So we go into service. We couldn't do any more competitive miles, but the car was drivable. Otherwise, it's just blown up. So we decided we headed out, checked out his new tires on, checked out his service. We're running in behind the road, behind Marcus, and pulled into the stage arrival. Just before we got the hats and all on, I went back down the line, half a dozen of the boys. So it was all good lads, generally in the Ankro, likes of Warren Philskirk, Steve Petch, Tony Davies, all these sort of guys. Roger. All really good guys. And then there was Marcus, and we just told the boys behind us, listen, we're retiring here, but we're not going to tell Marcus. So all we're going to do is when Marcus goes to start line, we're going to pull up behind him. He'll pull off. And we'll pull up to get our start time. I'm going to get out, open the bonnet, make a bit of a kerfuffle, and just say, sorry, we're out. So lads, just pull over to the edge so we can get out again. So this was all set up. Marcus got out of the stage start time, 3, 2, 1, go. Off he went like the hammers of hell, fighting for the championship. We pulls up to the start line, right on cue. I get out, throw the bonnet up. Oh, for God's sake, that's it. Flip. Sorry, lads, sorry, we're out. Hand them time cards in, turned round, drove out. Came all the way back. The boys were all set up to get the trailer and all ready for us coming back. And the only person who twigged what was happening was Rob Arthur, who provided Bernard's news. And he just came over and whispered in my ear. He says, I know what you're at. And then we were driving down the road and we got the phone call. Marcus had put it off on the stage, and that was our championship. So the lesson was keep going until you can.
Keep the pressure on. You really.
Yeah.
Psychologically, he was still racing us up until that corner that he went off on. But little did he know, the championship was his. All he had to do was cruise. So it was a little bit of psychological warfare, which worked out in the end.
Brilliant, eh? Fantastic. Those are stories, and yeah, indeed. And your record in Ankro National Championship, clearly Marcus Dodd, he'd been doing it for years and years. I think it's something like 27 wins, but you're joint third in the number of wins in that series. I saw that the other day as well. So
I wouldn't have.
Listen, fantastic events, weren't they? I mean, I found like I loved it here, but it was just getting a bit repetitive. You know, you're on the same old circle of events, and same, you know, the recce's as well. We're just quite grinding, and whenever you're starting your own business and you're getting going, it's time's hard. The Ankro format was brilliant. You travelled on the Friday, turned up with organisers' notes, scrutiny on Friday night, turned up, bang, rally Saturday, either home Saturday night or a few pints, and home on Sunday. It was absolutely magic, and all the organisers were fantastic.
Yeah, we had the A-team servicing for us, if you can remember.
That's right.
So,
The A-team.
Dermot Haggard.
Or the A-team, really, wasn't it?
We were the A-team. And who else was there? Yogi.
Yogi.
Okay.
Yeah, Yogi was the main man for the van now.
That's right. And Dermy, and there was somebody else in the middle of that. I'm not sure whether it was. I don't think it was Sam or Sean. But there was somebody else, and I can't think who it was. Yeah.
You Yogi convinced that my wife now girlfriend was Eddie Jordan's daughter. So whenever she turned up the first service, she's never really been to rally. Yogi was practically bowing. It was bless him.
Yeah.
And I remember as well. Do you remember? It was 2002 Sunseeker, and at Sunseeker, Rick Smith. The stages were really average, but the event was world class.
Yeah, it was the promotional side of it and everything.
It was unbelievable. You felt you were doing this really special event, but the stages were all right. They weren't brilliant, but they were just all right. But he put some amount of effort into the organization. And there was one year, one of the sponsors was, if you can call it, was a local gentleman's club.
Uh-huh.
And, we had won it that year. I think it was 2002. And we're pulled on the ramp and doing the champagne and all. And I was wondering, who on earth is sticking their elbow into me? Like, for goodness sake, would you back off? And I turned around, and there was one of these ladies from the gentleman's club, and it wasn't her elbow; it was something else.
Yes.
But it was as hard as that table.
Uh-huh.
I flipped my eyes were open. Tell you what, we innocent boy.
Yeah, and from all the way from Bangor and County Down, not that it's just too much. Kenny, you're going to say something there?
Robbie, I'll remember this so well. In fact, we're talking about today.
Before you do that, would anybody like to see a launch control in reverse? I think that'd be worth having a look at. I think we definitely. Everybody wants to see this. Look at Noel's face. Oh, jeez. We're going to have to watch that again.
No.
How do you do that?
You just don't put it into first gear.
All right. Okay, thanks for that technical explanation. Well,
look at the recovery. What you have to do is look at the recovery there.
I was nearly the same as my brother, broken C1 there.
Yeah.
That must be some shock, though. If you're expecting to go forward, I remember I was a service manager for Fiat way back in the day, and for Francie Neal, and we got a driving instructor's car in, and I said to the apprentice who's doing the service on it, I said, right, when you take in that car for a run, I need to go. I want to make sure this car is right. It needs to be sorted. So, of course, get in the workshop, in the passenger seat of it. He's in reverse, flat out in the workshop. I stood on the brakes, there's dual control. Well, you talk about a panic it is in, like, because you don't know what you've hit.
That's
The
right.
car just stops suddenly. It's the same sort of thing, in that situation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's crazy. The one that I was going to tell you there about our Group 4 Escort, we had a Rallycross car, so we had, which probably wasn't the tidiest of a yoke, and we made her so that she would go and do a rally. And so we went to do the Sunseeker, Robbie and I. I think Sam and Sean and the boys were all there. So because she was a Rallycross yoke, she was sitting on Rallycross tires, and we took her into scrutiny. And like we spent some time on scrutiny trying to get that thing, so that she'd pass. You know what Sunseeker scrutineers would be like? They're very, very tight.
yeah,
But basically, like those things like the handbrake, Robbie could tell you, no handbrake, with no mechanical handbrake. We had cables on it, just to make it look like it. But it's a hydraulic handbrake, which every car was the same, but they just didn't want the car starting the rally, I think, anyway. But punched a hole in the floor and put a big screwdriver through it, through the prop shaft, and that basically, you couldn't touch it, so there was an argument there as to, Robbie, he says, technically, that's a parking brake, you can't move it. So why should do whatever you want, it won't move. So eventually the scrutineer says to us, look, I'm going to pass this car, but I can tell you now, the only good thing about that car is your tax book. The rest of it's rubbish. So it was sitting on the seat front, ready to start the stage the next morning, and it was a tarmac stage. So we left the Rallycross tires on it, really soft tires and whatever. I'm not sure what number we were on, maybe 10 or 12 or something like that. We started off down the stage, absolutely flat out. First of all, the one of the organisers said, look, guys, if you're going to change tires, you need to change them now, because you're not allowed to change tires between now and service, which is 5 stages later. And there was 4 gravel stages, so 1 tarmac and then 4 gravel.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, down the first stage, we just left the Rallycross tires on, fastest on the first stage. We get her stand at the end of the stage dancing, because this thing was sort of lifting wheels and doing all the stuff. Everybody else was in gravel tires.
Yeah.
So that was okay. I says to Robbie, whenever we moved off, say, this guy, who's a judge of fact, has just pulled in behind us, what do we do? Robbie says, well, I'm not sure. So drive up to the roundabout. Robbie says, you just wait until something big there comes. And then at the last minute, drive out in front of it.
Dicing with death again, this man, because it seems to be a theme here.
Oh, yeah. And go right round the roundabout. Don't go the route that we want to go. So, of course, we done that. Waited for a big lorry to come, pulled out straight in front of it, and right round the roundabout again. So the guy in the car, he obviously couldn't get out until the lorry had passed. And, of course, the lorry went down the road, and he followed the lorry down the road that we were meant to be going.
Yeah.
So, of course, the petrol station on the left-hand side, the boys were all sitting in behind it, in gravel tires on where we went. And then we were fastest on the next 4 stages out of 5, I think it was, something like that. And the head gasket blew in the car. So we were actively leading the rally whenever we went out in this heap of junk, which was a Rallycross Group 4 Escort, which was a bloody good car, but it was a bit rough around the edges, It was a good story. Now, it was a good story about getting one up, sort of thing,
Yeah, being creative.
Andy Burton as well. He was in Yankro as well. That was some bit of kit.
Oh, fantastic sounding car.
Unbelievable.
We're talking about the 306.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
The tour engine,
man, as well. Absolute gentleman.
Yeah. So, and that's a guy who could set a time that would have been the top 7, I think, in Rally GB when you put his time. I think it was Radner or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Would have been 7 fastest in the World Championship.
It's probably 450 horsepower.
Well, you would have appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A man who, your mechanical background and
we just loved competing against him. There's a few guys there really didn't like what he was doing, but it didn't annoy us. He had lots of problems with it, and that's probably hindered a lot of his results.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Got you.
He actually went off, you remember, in Sunseeker and just in front of us into the trees. And that got us up to third, I think, on the first. Yeah. And because I just remember it was just getting dark and the steam, you know, when you come around the forest and all you can see is steam. And it's not a good sign, you know. So, and that was Andy. Yeah.
Robbie, any stories that you want to finish with?
Well, when you showed that video there, I was thinking back to things that make you cringe when you reflect on them or look back and think, you know, did I really do that, or was I part of that scene? And I remember doing the first circuit of Ireland with Kenny. I think it was about 84 or somewhere there in the wee Group A Escort, Kenny.
Yeah, that's right.
The white car.
The white car. And
yep.
Lining up, I think we were coming out of Waterford or somewhere like that. I think the rally had just moved to Waterford. That car there, CJI.
Yep.
We're just coming out of Waterford and we're going to the first stage. And in front of us, starting in front of us was Henry Toivonen, I think it was. But he had some sort of a go-karting accident or something that he was doing with Rothmans the night before. Something.
Waterford, yeah.
That's right, broke his foot or something. But in those days, I had just been promoted to the seat alongside Kenny McKinstry. And as far as I was concerned, Kenny was going to win whatever happened, or we were going to win Group A. And I didn't really care who Toivonen was, or the fact that he had busted his foot or whatever. So we're sitting on the start line, and I get out of the car, never said a word to Kenny, and up and knocked on the glass, and Toivonen looked around at me. And I says, now, boy, if you have a problem in this stage, we're coming behind you. I want you pulling over. And I got back into the car. Kenny said, what did you say to him there? What were you at? I says, I told him to pull over if you catch him. Kenny looked and said, did you really say that? Because this is embarrassing.
What did he say?
He never said anything. I think he just looked at me as if I was some sort of a lunatic, you know. And but I think he got the message good enough on it. We didn't catch him, I don't think, if I remember correctly. But anyway, I wanted him out of the way because as far as I was concerned, we were going to win.
Yeah. So the whole point of that car, Kenny, was it had to be a Group A car, didn't it? You know, that was what year would that have been? 1984? 84?
I think it was 84.
84. You finished sixth overall in that car. Like, there's no arches on it, there's nothing. But handling-wise, that much, I think that was probably one of the strengths.
It wasn't a very fast car, but it handled so well. You know, you're allowed to do all the suspension mods that you could do, rear axle, big brakes, all that stuff. But the power was limited, you know. Just crazy, you know.
Yeah. Any more stories, Kenny, that you want to regale us? I don't want you to finish this conversation and then, oh, damn. And that'll happen tomorrow. You'll think, I wish I'd have told that one. Because it's just literally thousands.
Tom Garrity, just want to talk a wee bit about Tom.
Yeah.
I met Tom Garrity in Waterford. And at that particular time, it was DDA. And, so this guy comes walking out over to me, and we had a problem with the clutch and DDA clutch mechanism and all that there. It was never a very reliable thing. But this guy comes over and he says, look, you know, can I help? Can I go and find anything? And I showed him the wee bits that go on. It was like a wee half moon and two wee rings, you know, for to hold the part of the clutch and all together. And he says, I'll go, what will we get it in? So you would have got it in an old 100E van at the time, you know, one of the old Angela vans. And they had it. And he says, well, I'll go and look at it, and if I have it, you'll get it in the morning. So that was okay. Davy Greer and myself and a guy called Diesel on our service crew, we all went to a different scrapyard, basically see if we could find any of these components. And there was, I think, well, we had 3 vehicles in total and we're down the road. And obviously Sumo 1 to Sumo 2 and all that stuff was going on. Looked through the scrapyard, couldn't get what we wanted, but we needed UMC bolts which held the gearbox to the engine. And of course, we're driving down the road and I says, no, Davy Greer, Sumo 2 to Sumo 1, is Diesel with you? And I says, no, he's not. So there's a big silence on the phone. And then he phones me back again or calls me back again. He says, Diesel is with you. I says, he's not with me, David. I'm telling you now, he's not with me. Well, he's not with us. And again, there's a big silence. So, of course, we had left without Diesel. We headed way back up to the scrapyard again, and there was the boy just wandering around the scrapyard trying to screw bolts out of all the old cars of the day. UNC bolts, just hadn't a care in the world. But whenever we came back the next morning, Tom Garrity had got me 3 sets of these wee rings and clips and stuff. And he says, better than that, what I have is I have got you a place in the morning that going out of Waterford, that you can put these in and get you a ramp and get you all into the place and all that. So that was where I met Tom Garrity, and I've been friends with him ever since. And it's just wonderful how like Tom Garrity, if I have room at all on my car, he'll be on the car somewhere. Tom Garrity cars, and did sponsor me whenever I was rallying, doing proper rallies and stuff. So it's guys like that, and Kevin Barrett.
So what's the secret then, Kenny, for anybody watching in, a young lad who wants to keep sponsorships? So clearly, everyone we've talked about before, they're sponsors that you've had for many years, and once you get a sponsor, you always keep them. What's the secret?
Well, I think part of the answer would be is basically look after what they're doing. If they're trying to sell a product, it's basically try and get them as much advertising as possible. Robbie was always good at that, on his side of things. It's a PR exercise the whole time. Some people, like Tom, for instance, Tom Garrity probably didn't do it for anything other than friendship. Kevin Barrett, obviously, again, the same thing, so, yeah. Kevin Doyle, sponsored me, not in monetary terms, but in so many things like tires and fuel, accommodation, hotels and stuff like that there. There's just so many, like Richard Dillon, for instance, who sponsored me earlier on. And the way he sponsored me was he took me to all the rallies. I didn't have to pay for a service van. All the spare parts were in his van. So all I needed was a car and a couple of crew. And like Richard Dillon was on my car for years. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those things, whenever Maggie has kept scrapbooks of all that stuff, whenever you look back on it, the sort of good times that we had, like Noel there knows as well, like Sean Mullally, who had sat with me, Mark Crowe, like I know we were going to talk about him, we haven't even got to him, there's so many. He was a complete devil, but a good co-driver, and that meant a lot. Sean Mullally, a super co-driver. Paul Baird, who's a friend of mine, sat with me in Sydney Mix Ryan.
So there's a car we haven't even talked about, the Sierra Ibiza. There's loads of things there.
The Sierra Ibiza, yeah.
You were a works driver.
Well, that was a scary car. That was just a scary car. I think you were with me, Robbie, whenever we drove that, were you?
The Philpott
McRae.
I mind driving that car on hard slicks, so, if you go back to Super Chicken, as we call him, Brian McNamee, Brian McNamee in the early days, like only for Brian and Monaghan Poultry, I wouldn't have got all those wins that I got in Monaghan, Cavan, Sligo, all that sort of stuff. Monaghan Poultry was, he's still involved in scrutineers, one of the chief scrutineers, in the Southern rallies. Kenny Hull, for instance, what can you say? Like Noel got busy for a while this last couple of years, and Kenny Hull has stood in for a whole lot of rallies that we have done. Another brilliant co-driver, what can you say? Co-drivers, I give them a hard time, and there's no doubt about that. But you see, whenever you have a good co-driver in your car, it's worth 50 horsepower. That's just as simple as that. I mean,
but I think in fairness, you had to balance it between paying for the bills and
absolutely.
So there had to be something in there that you had to factor in as well, Kenny, which you were. It's wise to do. It was a good thing to do. But
it was the only thing. It was either that or do nothing. I mean, the time that we went to the Rallycross was simply because we couldn't afford to go rallying.
Yeah,
just as simple as that. Like and if you think of the crack that we had with guys like Bertie Law and Fred Crawford, my goodness,
Freddie Patterson.
Yeah, Freddie P.
Days, yeah.
Guys, like
Dennis
Dennis Bickerstaff. Like, I have a list of stuff here, and every time I look at it, I see something different, that and you go through one of these scrapbooks, and my goodness, it's just
some memories though. But you're going to get that over 45 years of competing anyway, and the number of people who
exactly, Exactly. Yeah. Emma, she's just come through the door in there, and she says, "Tell these guys the Peugeot 106 story." Very, very quickly, because I know you're pushed for time. But I said I would take Emma to Galloway Hills, so I could show her how to drive on gravel with the wee 106.
Yeah.
Of course, halfway through the stage, I rolled it.
Good skills.
So managed to get it back onto his feet again, and got to the end of the stage. Windscreen all broken and side window broken and all that there. Of course, my good brother standing at the end of the stage. First question he asked me was, or said to me, it wasn't like, "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Or are you, is your co-driver okay?" or anything like that. He says, "Hey, fuck boy, you're going to take some stick on the boat going home tonight." That's just the humour, in the whole team, like. It's just unbelievable, like,
But that sort of stuff happens. The Sierra Challenge car.
Yeah. First night, before it was our rally car, I rolled it. I think Sean McElhern was with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just come around this corner. Is that right, Robbie? Yeah.
That's exactly who was with you. And only up the road.
So just for context, this was a series that Ford put together at the launch of the Sierra Cosworth, the 3-door. It wasn't even a road car at this point. So they got together a championship where 7 people in the UK got their local RS dealer. In your case, it was Lindsay's. And off you went to do some rallies in these road cars, effectively, which were classed as Group A, but a little more than that. Go on ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and that was it. And we just it's not 3 miles from my house here. We just come around a big long left-hand corner, and just halfway around the corner, in this Causey, which was a fast car, like. And just the road covered in SH1T, and it just understeered up the bank, took a pole down up the bank and rolled it. And I can still remember the phone call that I made to David Sanford. I wrecked this car, David, and he just thought
Lindsay Cars, that is, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the bosses in Lindsay Cars. Like, my goodness, that just was a year that didn't work for me, unfortunately, because we probably, first of all, it was very much a guinea pig sort of situation. There was some of the engines gave bother, which we had no control over, with overheating problems and that. Most of the events were in England.
Yeah,
and where a lot of those guys, had a bit more knowledge than we did.
Yeah.
Not to
but
take
you got top drivers there. You got Phil Collins, you got Chris Millers, you got Dougie Watson Clark. There's just a load of them. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Right. Cool. But again, you could just look at. We're talking about Phil Collins, like that picture alone, and your experience with Colin over the years, which you'd have met him plenty of times and had plenty of crack with him, it's just...
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, and if you think of all the people that we met, through all our rallying days, like Robbie and Noel there, like, a lot of the people that we have met, just in conversation, like, not even rally men,
Of course.
If you're even in the pub where you're doing the recce, there's always a farmer who wants to talk to you, about a crack about the rally and where it was going and all that. Like
doing a bit of spotting.
That's exactly. I was just going to tell the story, like, and it was this old guy, and we stopped with him, and the first words he said to Noel just out through the window, "Are you doing a bit of spotting?" That's what he called it. He didn't know what to call it, you know. So well, he was very happy when he is going to be here and all that sort of stuff, you know. But it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Look at this photo as well. So we're talking here 96, I think, in Donegal.
That was one of the best cars I ever had. I mean, it was the only car that I ever had that I would have needed. I needed seat belts on it for to take anybody for a spin in it. I know you should always wear seat belts. But, if I was taking you for a spin or somebody down the road, I wouldn't, because you know you're not going hard, you know. But in that car, it would throw you out of the seat.
Yeah.
You know, you had a fight with that car the whole time, but it was something else to drive with.
They're incredible tools, weren't they? F2 cars. Story. I was talking to Gethin Jones today, and he was telling me a story about a tip that you gave him because he was driving the factory car, I think, at the time when you had yours.
All right, okay.
And I think there was an issue with the vented discs because they were cross drilled and they cracked quite quickly.
Right.
So the advice that you gave him was you don't start warming your brakes 2 miles from the stage. You start warming your brakes as you leave the service park, and you gradually put the heat in them, because the difference in me and you, Gethin, is I have to pay for my discs. And I think there's a fair bit of that over the years, just being a bit creative around. There's room service for Robbie. He's getting his breakfast now. There's a bit of that, clearly, that you had to factor in as well, to do things in a budget. And the life part's probably a bit longer than you should have had over the years, which would have held you back with results and things like that too, I'm sure.
That's right. That's for sure. That's where the Caliber sponsorship really did work for us, because the Group N car was not a reliable car, but what we done was we put the budget that they were giving us into the car. And so every 2 rallies, we put a new gearbox in and a new turbo, and then sold off the other ones. You know, so that was, if I was paying for those bills rather than a sponsor, you'd have been taking 3, 4, 5 rallies. You've maybe been trying to take all year out of the parts. So it's all relative to the budget that you have, and it makes it a lot easier. But as a lot of people do know, it's not an easy thing. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to get, and it's not an easy thing to hold on to.
And here we are.
You'd always maintain, Kenny, that spin on the Isle of Man was just down to money for tyres.
I honestly think, Noel, that if we had put on a new set of tyres, you know, going out of service that time, we had 3 stages to do.
Yeah.
I think if we had put a new set of tyres on, I don't think that would have happened, because the car, if you can remember, it's a big long left-hand corner. It broke away so gently.
Yeah.
At one point, I thought I was actually going to catch it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything, you know, it was just so smooth the way it just broke away. And that was just lack of grip on the back. And possibly a new set of tyres would have made the difference, you know.
And then the flip side is, if you remember the time that you put new tyres on Marine Drive.
Oh boy, that was scary. I think I told Robbie about this, but yeah, we put them on, and obviously whenever you leave service, you need to scrub tyres in. So we couldn't do, because we left the grandstand and we're driving down through the town. You go into Marine Drive, which again is just, you know, it's still inside the town boundaries. And we started off, and there's like 2 very slight corners, but you're accelerating the whole time. I think we were in the Legacy, or the Group A.
No, the Group A car.
Was the Group A?
Yeah, it was certainly. I was never in the Legacy.
All right. So it was either that or the S8, some one of the two. But what I done was just got it into 5th or 6th gear, and then started weaving it about the road, you know, as we were doing rally speed, because it was a massive big wide road. Well, flip me, it got into a tank slapper. So it did. And there must be 300 foot of a drop with a wee small wall down into the sea. And it sort of spun in the middle of the road and then bounced off a curb. It went on for a long time, if my memory serves me right. And we eventually got it. We got it, we held it. I think it was by good luck rather than anything else. We got to the finish of the stage. We still got a reasonable time, but it scared the hell out of both of us, didn't it?
I still remember being a bit pale. Now that's the same stage going the other way. You remember in the national, we were first in the road, and we're just about to go, and the marshal says, "Hold on, guys, just going to hold you a minute. The divers aren't in place yet."
Yes.
That's not what you want to hear on the
That
start.
focuses the mind a bit, doesn't it?
What? If you're lucky enough, I think the divers are just fishing you out because it's that far down. It's like you're.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah. You only put the seatbelts on so they can find you, like.
Yeah. You're with the car is the best place.
Yeah. Guys,
I'm going to have to drop off here because I think that call was my warning sign. If I don't get out of here and take people to their lunch, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Is the sun
right? The sun's out here. Good enough. Yes, be on the beach in a couple of minutes, I'd say.
Good man. Well, enjoy your holiday in Hawaii, Robbie. Thanks for taking the time out. I know you've only arrived there today, so thanks a million for that. We will be in touch and we'll do a podcast if that works out for you.
Absolutely.
Just for all the learning that'll help young kids coming through and focusing on what you did. Certainly you've helped Kenny out. So thanks a million for that, Robbie.
No problem. And thanks for letting me share all the stories that were going on. It was great to catch up with a lot of people, even who are writing in there, just to hear some of the old names pop up again. Thanks.
Listen, we're over 3 hours in. There's over 300 people still watching this, and the comments here, like this one from Davy Greer: "How you in Lurgan Park? You waiting Kenny crashing?" That's the only way you're going to do it.
That's a typical Greer's.
Robbie, we'll see you later. You take care. Have a good holiday. Cheers now. Bye.
Cheers.
I'm just going to quickly scan here. I think Joe was on here. There's a comment here. I can't remember where she is. Where's Joe? Joe. Sorry, guys. It's just trying to get through all of these. It's just mad. Anyway, I'll come back. She basically said it's better in the Harry and Meghan interview so far, Joe Philpott. So I thought, fair enough. It'll be a bit less controversy over it anyway, I think, as I go through that. Is any outstanding here that I can see? Then I'll do. Rami Nelson's in the house, and Martin Spurrell. Martin Spurrell's there talking about the 92 win and the legacy. So here's the thing as well. I haven't even talked about the preparation business. I haven't talked about the fact you did Chris Meek and Marco Martin driving your cars.
Yeah, a first and a second in Cork. Like, my goodness, that was just brilliant. That was Mark Higgins though. Mark Higgins and Marco Martin.
Yeah.
In Cork, and then Chris won Killarney and.
Yeah.
The S9, I believe it was, or S11. I mean, we had Stig Bloomfist in the Millennium Rally. Marky Elaine and the Silverstone thing. And we have had tons of really good customers over the years, hiring bits and pieces for sure. All good. And lots of them really good drivers.
Great. Who else is here? Robert Woodside, an August Freddy's evening. He loves you to bits. Bit of man love there going on. Harry Burke says I think he probably meant hi. So there's a story as well. I did the Virgo Rally with Harry Burke in 1983. Yeah. So it was the first round of the Tarmac Championship that Motor News sponsored at the time. You went over Bertie Law. James Doherty was over from Ireland as well. Yeah. Do you remember that one in Epping?
Oh, in Epping, yes. Yeah, I'll never forget it.
Go on. We'll finish with that story because that's a good one.
Yeah, well, just basically, we went over to Epping, and I thought, look, it can't be that difficult. And there was notes, and again, Kevin was sitting with me, and obviously, you got a piece of paper that had pace notes on it, and it went from A to B, and then you got another sheet of paper, and it went from B to C or B to D, and that's the way you linked up the notes. But Kevin just could not read them. I mean, it was just because he didn't read pace notes. It was just as simple. And
sure.
It happened was so fast. So after 2 stages, Kevin was violently sick. absolutely, you know, and I don't know how you've ever seen anybody been sick in a rally car, but it's just
not good.
so, no, it's so bad. So we basically pulled out of the rally because our times were crap anyway. And Mick Jones was there. And
Mike Jones, yeah. Uh-huh.
Or Mike Jones. He says, you want me to co-drive for you? Yeah, well, why not? We thought that was a good idea. So, of course, a couple of stages. He had no notes at all. Basically, he says, you just need to believe everything I am telling you is the truth. If I say, you keep your foot full down, I won't lead you into anything bad. And he was absolutely brilliant. There's no doubt about it. Until we come to a time control, and the guy said to him, what's your name? It was Welsh Kevin Doyle.
Uh-huh.
And he says, could you sign your name on this piece of paper for me? And so that was the game up. So we were probably then, you know, very, very lucky that nobody reported us to lose our license or anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
But one of the great stories, you know, and that's what rallying was about away, you know, and what was that, 90s or something like that?
That was 1983.
83, my goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
I was a young fella then, I was only 30.
I was 19, 20.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. It's mad, you know, just one name, Harry Burke. It springs another story. You know, Neil James emailed me in the week to tell me about that one, about the flying postman as well, and there's Mark 1 Cortina, who you had a phone call with. Well, again, would you just keep talking for about another 2 days?
I'll tell you an always story about Noel, and I always think it's a great story. It sort of puts co-drivers in a good light, you know, as to...
Well, like that one. That's a good one to finish on.
Yeah. So we're doing Druidale, and like Druidale's like a whole lot of people think it's a horrible wee stage, but I actually particularly like it, and I'm sure you've been from the Brandywell Cottage going down the west.
Yeah, just for context, if anybody remembers Mark Higgins doing the commentary, that's the section of road that we're talking about here, the in-car commentary.
Yeah, halfway through the stage, you dip down into a valley, so you do, and there's a little stream. There's a mountainside on the left-hand side with a bank. There's a big drop on the right-hand side, and so on. And yeah, so we're coming down that, and absolutely, that Noel's notes is like right and left over crest, which is 6th gear, put into the job. Wee bit of water running on the road, and then it's 100 yards, dip into grid, into 3 left, as you can imagine, over a cattle grid. And whenever we're going through the one right and left, I hit the bank with the back of the car, and the whole thing just, I lost it, and we're doing like a tank slapper down the road.
Making a pizza, yeah.
Well, all I could see was Noel setting the notes down, folding his arms like that.
Uh-huh.
And by the time we got down into the dip, that was fine. Your man was sitting with the notes again, calling the 3 left over the grid. And then there was 150 or 200 yards up to a square right. And I just started laughing going up that straight.
Yeah. See, I would have asked you if you'd finished your mucking about before I started reading.
And then your man, he says to me, he says, what were you laughing at in the middle of that stage? I said, I'm laughing at you, like how silly you are, being able to think we're going to have an accident and then brave enough for to lift the notes up again and just continue as if it never happened. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we did. I still remember. You talk about decision making. I still remember it was Astor Stages or something in North Wales, and it was in Goldie. Remember the 2-door?
Yeah.
It was organisers' notes, and they were a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
And we went down this really fast corner, and I think we called 3 right, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a 4 at best.
Yeah.
And I still remember starting to slide, and it was like just fresh air on the edge. And I still remember you steering, turning straight. We didn't try to turn in the corner because we knew what the consequences was that it would have been a big roll. You actually turned straight, and we went off the edge straight. Yeah. And I still remember thinking at the time, that's the right decision. Just before we went nose first and then barrel, went end over.
We'll go for option A here.
Yeah, but and the only injury you got was you punched yourself in the face. If you remember, you gave yourself a black eye.
And that was the first time I would say I got scared in a rally car, because you were the same, Noel, if I can remember. The two of us were actually sitting in the rally car because the car actually barrel rolled forwards, end over end type thing, but never hit anything other than landed on our feet again, because it was about 25 foot of a drop, if memory serves me right. And we dropped down into that there, and for about 30 seconds, I couldn't move a muscle. And you were the same. And then, lo and behold, typical rally corner, there was 50 people around us. And they had saws, they had rope.
That's
and
right.
basically, they hooked it on, they cut down all the wee branches that was all around us, and they towed us back up onto the path. They actually pulled us back up manually on a rope.
And there wasn't a piece of glass or a spoiler or anything left on it, but she was still driving straight.
Still driving straight, yeah. There you go.
Somebody's got pictures of it. There we go. Nathan Davis.
Well, on the inside, Nathan, I still remember thinking that was the right decision to turn straight. And actually, it still amazed me that he had the presence of mind to do it, even though it turned out it didn't work out in the end, but it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's the level of split, that split second decision,
It's amazing where all those spectators come from. It's obviously a couple of the Welsh guys that said, this is a famous enough place. What's that? There's no finish travel.
In other words, we have to keep going to Sunday.
Sunday, no problem. Some crack.
Yeah. Listen, Noel's still at work. He has to get home out of the office because he reckoned he'd give better interweb connection there. Noel,
I'm heading
any last thoughts? Anything you want to say before we finish?
No, listen, it's been... my only regret is that we haven't got to do anything over the last few years, or a couple of years. It's been very frustrating, particularly last year, obviously. But it's been an honour, it really has. I mean, once I started getting a few miles up and a few results, to think that one day, I looked as you would pull up your EWRC results, and I don't have that many events that are registered in that, but as you can see at 98, 99, when I sit with Kenny, and my results go from class results to overalls, first, second, fourth, and to be able to have done that has been a complete privilege and pleasure. And everybody's brilliant. The team was brilliant. I loved every minute of it, and it's if I go back and do it again, I absolutely would.
But there's no sign of him stopping. That's the thing.
No, absolutely not. And the only frustration the last few years has been is that the standard would be on a Thursday or a Friday, you get a phone call, what are you doing on Saturday? And my sort of pedant and my just likes to be more organized than that, I always like to be prepared so that at least you're on top of all the eventualities that could happen. But listen, I look forward to keep going at some point in the future again, because you do miss it. You do miss the thrill. You do miss the exhilaration. Like there's nothing better. Whenever I was doing the rallies, just regularly, I just have to, on a Friday or a Thursday, if I was leaving the office, I would have to write on my diary on the Monday what I was working on, because when I come back from a rally weekend, I would have forgotten completely.
Yeah.
So it was exactly what was needed. It cleared the head, doing something equally sort of fairly intense and fairly full of adrenaline, but it just got your mind completely away from what you're doing Monday to Friday, which was magic. And the element of risk helped a lot. But I have to say, I never felt in danger in the car with him, never. And you just knew that he was on top of the job. He did the driving, I did what I had to do, and that was it. There was no nonsense. You didn't have to encourage him. There was no, you see a lot of the in-car, and guys are encouraging and geeing them up and criticising, and there was none of that. As Robbie said earlier, it was, you delivered the notes, And if there was anything said on the stage, it was him normally saying, "Mark it," because you knew on the second lap we just wanted to talk about that. That would be it, So it was when the 3-2-1 go, it was about beating the clock. That was all. And then once you got across the finish line, it was all about the crack, and there was always plenty of that.
There definitely is always plenty of that. Kenny, any last thoughts before we
Yeah, just a final word to all the co-drivers, and look, there's a ton of co-drivers that I have had, and just to name a few, like Declan Tomley, Mark Crowe, Kenny Hull, my goodness, Kenny, another super guy in a rally car. He's a son-in-law now, so I have to say all good things. Paul Bird, Richard Dillon, Tom Garvey setting me in events, obviously Noel and Robbie Philpott, Kevin Doyle. And look, I know there's other co-drivers there that have set in with me in events, and just thanks to every one of them. Because
Leslie McGaffin will never forgive you if you don't mention her.
Well, Leslie McGaffin was a star, and probably one of those people that I wish the car had broke down with, but absolutely. Yes, Eamon McCafferty, Eamon McCafferty took me.
That's right.
It wouldn't do to forget Eamon McCafferty. Like, my goodness.
My brother Michael, he did it. He did Secret with you.
Don't fret over it, Kenny. You'll never remember everybody over 45 years. And it's not just in the co-driver's seat, it's everybody who was part of Team McKinstry.
Yes,
it was my pleasure to be part of it,
Yeah, and my daughter, she just knelt through the door there.
Yeah. But it's not just the family, and we're talking about the whole family, Susan, everybody's involved in it, but the greater Team McKinstry, which I had the privilege to be involved and be accepted into the team and do my little job of co-driving co-driving gravel cars and all that type of thing. It was great. As a fan growing up, as a teenager, and to do something like this and just to give you the credit. And here we are, as I said, like 3 hours, 21 minutes in with 295 people still watching it after all this time. The comments have just been mind-blowing. I will get back and I will read every one of them. Likewise, you guys can read them on Facebook and on YouTube. You'll be able to see that as you go through and reply to them if you want to. But just the love and the esteem that you're held in Irish rallying. The legend is a true word. After 45 years and still wanting to do more, it's just incredible. So fair play.
And a quick thank you just to the guys in McKinstry Motorsport. They're the boys who put all the stuff together. So, and there's been different ones at different times. So thanks for that.
Cool. Guys, stay where you are. I'll get finished off here. Anybody, if you haven't seen all of this, because it is a bit of a marathon, literally in about 15 minutes time, it'll all be uploaded, the recordings. Will be uploaded onto Facebook and YouTube. It'll also be on Twitter as well under TA Agnew. But easy enough to find if you search for the Stage by Stage show. It'll get that. Or as of in about half an hour, I'll put it on the blog as well. Likewise, any of the previous shows, if you haven't seen them, like a Gary Jennings, Niall McShea, the Galway 50th International, or the International Rally 50th birthday, Bobby Willis recently, Plum Tyndall last week. There's just a load of them on there if you want to have a look back and hear some rally stories, which is what this is all about on a Friday night. As I said, next week we're back in with the whole West Cork setup. So a West Cork rally celebration weekend where we'll have Bones O'Connor, we'll have Kevin O'Driscoll, Greg McCarthy from the organiser side of things. Also we'll have hopefully Ian Campbell and Paddy Flanagan to talk about the championship side of it and how that's developed over the years. And of course, the competitors, we'll have Gwyndaf Evans, we'll have Phil Collins, Frank Kelly, Donna Kelly and Paul Nagel's just confirmed there. Good luck to Paul in Italy. He's there with Craig this weekend as well. He's been texting me back and forward tonight. So that's the crack, guys. You stay where you are. I'll just run the titles here and we'll have a chat in a second. So until next week with the West Cork one, folks, have a good week and we'll catch up with you then.